Hi, and welcome to our ongoing series looking at the evolution of the Beaver Dam Area Community Theater over the decades. Hi, I'm Craig Warbold, and I'm the facilitator for this adventure today, and we are going to be focusing on the 1980s. I would like to introduce our guests here for our look at the 1980s at the Beaver Dam Area Community Theater. We've got Diane Lutz, Pat Lutz, Barb Rockroth, Ronnie Harper, Tina Swain, and Annette Camps. And my job as facilitator is basically just to kind of get things going and then stand back and let them all spin their yarns and tell their stories here. And so we'll maybe just start in a counterclockwise fashion, and maybe you could just, tell us when you started at the theater, and I guess maybe your first experience as far as the 1980s are concerned.
Okay. My first experience was in the summer of 1983. I directed South Pacific, and it was the very first building in the 219 North Spring Street building. And of course it came with a few challenges, considering the church, I believe, was still worshiping there. And as they moved out, we moved in. I used to joke because the altar was still there, and then I said to the cast, okay, I want you to cross downstage 5 steps. They literally were, because they were going from the altar down steps onto the lower level. And at one point we were rehearsing and they were taking out the organ, the pipe organ, so we worked around that. But I think Patrick and I were talking, one of the funniest things is you have a production team, and some of the typical responsibilities, makeup, hair, costumes. Well, we had to have, in the house, we had to have somebody in charge of fans, because it was not air conditioned. It was one of the hottest summers on record, or so we felt. We had to have somebody there were no screens on the windows, so I think my house manager brought some netting from camping to keep the mosquitoes out. Let's see, what else did we have? That was just kind of some unusual things, but we were excited because it was our own building. And we thought it was a good choice of production, because it was the first production there. And South Pacific was the very first musical production, I don't know how many years prior to that. So it was sort of an ongoing, it kind of tied the seasons together, so to speak. A new journey, a new step or phase for the community theater.
Was there a feeling that there were big shoes to fill? What with South Pacific having been, the first, right?
Right. Well, it was interesting history, because the man who played Emile de Beck in 1983, Gene Beneke, also played Emile de Beck in the first production. Oh, wow. I mean, it actually was more age appropriate, because the storyline, much older man and a young woman, and he was an older man, and he was attracted to a young woman who was a freshman in college. Interesting thing is, he was a math teacher at the high school, and the young woman, the Nellie Forbush character, was one of his students.
Oh, well.
That is an awkward.
But she was gone. She was out of high school, and so it was like, and I used to tease her. I'd say, those kisses are getting longer and
Yeah. I remember having to sit on Roger Van Haren's lap for Oliver. That might have been late 70s, but he had been my English teacher,
right.
And then you gotta get cozy and.
So was that 1983?
1983, the first.
So that was did we move in, Pat, in 82
right.
or 83?
83.
83.
I know it was the first show, but
It was all one big.
Patrick and I just were working on that. We think that the spring show had been at Drager's Village Square that year, and then or is that was that Blaze Spirit that no, Blaze Spirit was at
the mall.
Was at the mall,
right?
But so that was the first year that we had something at the theater. What was the last Plaza Suite? Was
we were
at
the
old theater,
Yeah, we were trying to figure out what was the last one.
Yeah, it was in the early
At the
80s
theater.
that we lost our theater.
Right,
We had to traipse
right.
around.
Yeah, and that was quite a transition, because we've been in the Wisconsin theater all those years, and then all of a sudden we had to move.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't know where we were going to be, so it was quite a transition for the whole organization. So I got involved in '82, the spring of '82, with The Count Will Rise Again, and that was at Drager's.
That was your
And
first
yes,
experience?
For
Oh.
Beaver Dam Community Theater. We had moved from Menominee, and we were very involved there with the theater organization. And we'd heard good things about the theater, so I thought, well, I'll just jump in and see what it's about. And we had tryouts at the Girl Scout house because our building, which is now the Alano Club, we pretty much shut it down for the winter because we didn't want to pay heat and water. And so when we went into the building, we would use the Alano Club and turn the heat on and as low as possible, because we were low on finances at the same time at that point, and everybody had their coat on when they were rehearsing. But we had tryouts at the Girl Scout house and had used the restroom when we were at the Alano Club. That was our building that we owned. You had to get a key and go down to the gas station that was at that time on the corner of Spring Street and use the outdoor, well, it wasn't, the door for the restroom was outdoor, but you had a key that you could go in and use it because we had all the water shut off at the building.
Wow.
But anyway, so the Girl Scout house also then was part of our organization's
Yeah.
meeting place. We had tryouts there for shows at different times, so we used the Girl Scout house a lot. But it was exciting in '83 when we bought the building. In the spring of '83, it was a major purchase for us. I think we paid about $48,000 for the building at that time. And everybody was worried, how were we ever going to pay for this building? Would we be able to have enough shows? And it kind of parallels all the same kind of feelings we had as we purchased our new building. But in the spring of '83, and I can't remember the exact month, but the community theater organization, we met in the basement, and the Baptist congregation, the numbers had dwindled because of age, and they just couldn't afford the building anymore. So they said, okay, we will sell it to you on land contract, but we would still like to use the building for our services on Sundays. So we thought, well, okay, we can make that work out. But we said, there's going to be times when the stage might be half painted black and you're going to be doing your services with some interesting things on the stage. And they said, well, we really don't have a lot of choice, so we're going to do this. So on the very last day that they were in charge of the building, we had to wait in the basement because Lisa Weisenseld played the organ for the very last time.
Oh.
And many people came to hear her do this little concert, and lots of family members came back, friends of the Baptist congregation. And so when they finished it, they came down and said, we're finished, and people were upstairs hugging and tears in their eyes, and I understand because that had been a very large congregation, very involved in the community. But we ran upstairs and were running in every corner of the building, looking and thinking, this is going to be so great, we will never fill up this building, we have so much room, and we were so excited, and we're thinking about, okay, we're going to do this and this and this, and that's how it all started.
Yeah.
And so it was
I
awfully
remember one
exciting.
of the fundraising plugs was that we would have more space for storage.
Oh, we did.
Right.
Maybe the first year we
Right.
had.
And again, there's another parallel, because our workshop was full of stuff that we eventually had to move over, and it had a very nice church basement, and it was full for almost a year as we kind of picked away at it and took things apart. But we had to move out within like a month after we sold the building that's now the Alano Club.
I'm not sure that I know the facts on this. Is it the same group that now has the church across from us, in the parking lot? Is that a different church group? I thought it was, but maybe
I
not.
think it is different.
It's a
Yeah,
different.
it's different, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. But it was the Baptist congregation, as I said, and so every Saturday night, another member and myself, we would have to go to the theater and move their altar and a couple of other things, their lectern, from the office. And they maintained the office. We couldn't use the office.
That's right.
So they had all of their things there, and we were supposed to touch it. And so we'd move their things and put them in position, and they'd have their congregation. They had about 30 people. But another funny story connected with that is because we were all using the same building, we were also very careful to turn the heat down in the winter. That first winter, we were really worried because, again, our finances were low. We spent all of our reserve money, and we had almost no money. And so we were talking about fundraisers and things like that. And so one month we got the heat bill, because somebody had used the office and turned the heat up. And the problem was, it was just one huge furnace in the basement heating the entire building. Where now it's zoned, and this building is zoned as well. So the building heat bill was about $350, which sometimes I have at my own house now. But back then, so I was on the board at the time, and I can't remember who was the president at the time, said, when you come to the meeting, bring your checkbooks. Because we're all gonna have to chip in, you know, like $10 or $15 to help pay for the heat bill for that one, for that first winter.
Yeah.
But we did have some interesting fundraisers
We did.
right in the building. One Father's Day, we had a pancake breakfast.
Yeah.
We had more than one.
I think
Yeah,
we
we
had
had
a couple of those.
right?
And then we also had an Italian night.
We had
Oh,
Italian.
yeah.
That's right,
Yeah.
John
Right.
Painter, is that his name? John?
Yeah, he helped us with the pancake, and then Carolyn Buss, who was very involved at that
Yes.
time, she had a friend that did the Italian cooking and had the sauce, and
Yeah.
we actually did very well. We all had fun serving all these.
Because the
Being a
building had a
church.
full kitchen,
Yeah,
for being a
exactly.
church, so
Yeah.
we used the full kitchen.
And that
Some
particular
food kind of
congregation
things.
was known for their fish fries. And so they had a full kitchen with all of these griddles and big stoves and refrigerators, and apparently at one time they made a lot of money by having carry-out fish for the Baptists.
Mm.
So we were lucky to have everything in the basement kitchen available, so we had those pancake
Does
breakfasts.
Anyone remember when the chamber used the basement at Halloween as a fundraiser?
No, I don't remember that.
They turned it into the haunted church.
Right,
Oh.
And that was when the Baptists said, you know, I think we're gonna move on, because the front of the building said, you know, come here, it's the haunted church, and they.
Oh, I remember it had
Right.
something to do with it.
It's like, I mean, I can
The fact that
understand
it was
that.
black
Yeah.
It
and
meant
their
no
altar was
disrespect,
down.
that's what it was called, and, you know,
Yeah.
where people pay money to go through this labyrinth of
Yeah.
yeah,
spooky
yeah,
things.
along with the JCs and the
Yeah.
chamber.
And
And
one
so then,
little fact too, Patrick, is that the basement area was the first gym in
Yes.
the community.
yeah, it was built in the early 1900s, the building, and it had a major connection with Wayland.
Oh.
They would use that building for all of their lectures,
Mhm.
they would use it for graduation ceremonies and
Because it had a
concerts.
slanted floor, the Baptists
Right.
are big on having slanted floors, or
Right.
used to be.
And so, and
And then-
Wayland also was a Baptist
Oh, yeah.
school.
And the
when it
basement
first
had,
started.
what had at one time been a really nice sprung wooden
Right.
floor.
It was considered the best basketball court in the city at one point, right?
Wow.
But it actually was panels that
Mhm.
hid
Right.
seating
Seating, right.
for,
And that, if you look up there, there's memorabilia now, and those doors would open, but if you open them now, it would open into the costume.
Mhm.
So that's where the
That's
people
right.
would sit,
That's where
because
the-
it was so tight, I mean, nobody could sit down actually on the floor.
Yeah.
They had to sit up above in this
That-
little
Oh, my
viewing
gosh.
area, and there were locker
I
rooms,
wondered why those doors were
also in the
there.
basement, in the, what we consider the paint room or the furnace room.
Mhm.
How long did the partnership with the church last? Did it
Only
make it
a
on
few
to
years, and
This was
then they
even a few
moved
years.
to Wayland and used the chapel at Wayland.
Okay.
It was
all right.
pretty shortly, because they decided it was just too awkward. Our purposes were pretty different.
And what was Drager's Village Square?
That was a restaurant,
Okay.
and a lot of, if people remember it, they would remember that it had a tree in it
Where was it located?
on Spring Street, so.
Okay.
with the Elks. It's the
That's
Elks
cool.
Club.
Oh, it's the Elks
Is it
Club.
the Elks?
Okay.
Okay.
So you guys performed a couple shows?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
yeah.
no, it was
Yeah.
when we were
Yeah.
between, after we couldn't use the Wisconsin Theater anymore, and then before we acquired the Baptist Church,
Okay.
we were
wandered.
floating.
Yeah, we were wanderers, right?
And just to clarify, the Wisconsin church is what is now Rogers Cinema. if I'm
Right,
not
right,
mistaken.
yes.
later, right,
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
Very good.
And what happened is that they let us, for many years, use the building. It wasn't the most convenient, because we could only do the shows during the week, not on the weekends, and many times we had to rehearse, you know, late at night, take everything down, and, you know, that was a big story for the 60s and 70s.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, it
Right,
carried
so-
into the
But we only
eighties, but
heard
those
about
people
it.
probably
Yeah,
talked about it.
right.
And if you
Yeah.
had to exit stage left and you had to enter stage right, you had to go out of the building, run around the building and
Yes.
come through.
Yeah.
Well, and to enter stage right, you had to go up these little steps, kind of crawl across a platform that was above a boiler, hang on to this asbestos-covered pipe, and lower yourself down and come out. Because I remember as a kid, working on props.
Are you talking about the movie theater?
In the movie
now?
theater.
Yeah.
I remember as a kid working on props, sitting on that platform, resting my chin on what I now know to be an asbestos-covered pipe, watching for the next time we're gonna do this. So that carried on into the early 80s,
Right.
but
And-
then we got rid of, well,
What happened is they said we couldn't do the productions
they
there
wanted to
because-
turn it into a multiplex.
Right, what they did is they took the
Oh.
balcony, which we needed for productions, and they turned that into a actual theater.
Mhm.
So they
Right.
created a screen, a small screen in the balcony, so they had two theaters on at the same time.
And you performed at the mall as well.
At the mall, yes,
We
at the
did-
mall.
I think Blood Spirit might have been the
Blood
only
Spirit,
show
I
there,
think.
although we did a major
It's at the mall.
fundraiser at
Yeah,
the mall.
yeah.
Yes, we did, well, it wasn't a fundraiser, but we had celebrated our 25th
Yes.
anniversary
Right.
there.
Right.
And I'm sure it went into that pot in some
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
Absolutely.
But that was a fun show because we kind of reflected everything that we had done so far.
Yeah.
Roger Van Haren was the MC, and it featured our treasured bench that
Oh,
has
Yes.
Yeah.
become.
That was in the 80s, right?
What is a
Yeah.
Yes.
treasured bench?
Oh, it's just this clunky
It's our
old
good luck bench.
bench that
Right.
looks like it came from a shanty's back porch or something, but if you paint that thing or beat it up or whatever, you could put it on as a park bench or a, picture something from, I'm
The
sorry.
King and I?
The King, not usually the King and I, but I guess if you painted it white, what am I, Dyer Van Frank maybe, or the
It started with Fiddler on the Roof.
Fiddler on the Roof is what
We
I'm
were
thinking
looking
of,
for
yeah.
a prop that would be appropriate to the primitive, country look. And then all of a sudden, people wanted to use it in every show
Yeah.
as their good luck
It was
bench.
I use it in every single show
To this day,
that I,
right?
yep.
I
that
think
I've
of
been
the
in.
chairs, I like,
Yeah.
why couldn't we use those chairs this last summer? The chairs that had the round backs and the.
Okay,
soda
yeah,
fountain?
and those have a story because those were the dining room chairs from the Hotel Rogers.
That's
Oh.
And they were getting rid of them all, and we said, yeah, we'll take them, and so we painted those chairs and used
Oh
them,
my
and there's
gosh.
still a few of them stored under the floor in the old building
Oh.
at the Spring
They
Street
were
building.
used
That's-
so
oh, yeah.
many times.
Yes, it just
Recovered,
almost seemed like it
painted,
wasn't a
and-
show if you didn't
I
have
know,
one
you
of
had to
those
have
chairs
those
in it.
chairs in it, right, right, yeah.
Barbara, what are some of your earliest memories of the theater in the 1980s?
Well, my husband and I, Randy's my husband, is from Beaver Dam. And we were stationed out in San Diego, and he got a job here in Beaver Dam. So we moved here, and we had met in community theater in West Bend. We were in a play together. And so one of the ways, I just knew that theater people were so welcoming. So we decided, he was always involved through high school and before he went into the Navy. And so his first show was 1776. And I remember doing the makeup for that, and I was pregnant. And to do the makeup, there was this room upstairs in back of the theater. And it was this little room, and one night, I'm standing there, and I think I was doing John Outen's makeup. And all of a sudden it dawned on me, if there's a fire, we're dead. And that's all I got.
That building was a fire.
It was a fire trap.
Yeah.
And I thought, I don't know if I can come and help anymore. This is really scary. And then you had to walk down these.
They were only this
Right,
wide, they
this
literally were only
wide,
that
and
wide.
of course they're that steep.
And rickety.
And rickety.
Yeah.
So that's how I
Uneven.
got involved. And then
What year was
I
that?
decided I really wanted to be in a show. And so I tried out for Plaza Suite, which was in the spring of 1980.
80, okay.
And so that was my first show. But I had helped do makeup for the other ones. And I remember, I know when we did Pippin, I remember dragging lawn chairs into the middle school. I mean, you all helped. I mean, community theater is really that. It's community. And I can remember when because Plaza Suite was at the theater, at the Rogers. And it was 3 vignettes and 3 different directors. And I was the last vignette, and my director was Jeff Rayberg.
Oh.
and my husband was Bob Hansen. And it was hysterical.
You were
It was
hysterical.
so fun.
That
It
that show
so
was because
fun.
Annette was trying to, she spearheaded trying to cultivate more directors. And there were several of us that were, you know, like I had grown up in community theater, but so, and Jeff Rayberg and I and Marilyn Van Haren each did an act. Because Plaza
That's quite
Suite
it
is
is.
really like 3 freestanding shows that just take place in the same room.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Barb wasn't
So
in
it
my
was
act,
fun.
but so I just got to sit back and laugh at
Yeah,
Barb.
so it was really fun.
What was so memorable about it? I've been hearing, you guys have been teasing before we started rolling, there was all chatter
They
about
were
this.
just the perfect comic combination. They
Yeah.
just hit it right.
Really did.
Yeah.
I can still remember.
Is
And
that
the
the one
dialogue
where your
was so
daughter
fun.
wouldn't come out of the
The
room?
closet, yeah,
Yes.
she was in the
It was the
bathroom.
daughter's wedding
Yeah.
day and she
And she
wouldn't
wouldn't
come
come
out.
out. And one of the funniest scenes is where Bob Hansen, I'm kneeling on the floor, begging her to come out. I ripped my nylons. And Bob Hansen picks up a chair. And I think this was your suggestion,
I don't
Annette,
remember.
where he leaps onto the bed, runs across the bed, ready to smash the chair against the door when she says, "I'm ready now." And it was just, I mean, the timing, he was
timing was
wonderful.
Yeah.
He was absolutely wonderful. So he was one of the first of my husbands.
First of many in the 80s.
Well, there's several, yeah.
But she's still with Randy?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. And then Randy, then we had, and I remember bringing our little boy, he was about 1.5, 2, and everybody would, it wasn't unusual to see little kids at rehearsals. And everybody would just kind of pick them up and carry them around, and my kids got so used to that. I think they thought that was normal. And, so then I dropped out, and we had decided that if my husband were in a play, I wouldn't be, and vice versa.
Oh.
And so, because we didn't want to, that was just too much.
Spend all your money on
It's-
sitters?
Yeah. So, yeah. And then, but I would do backstage stuff, and I do remember setting up lawn chairs at the middle school for Pippin. Randy was in The Count Will Rise Again, and that was fun.
It was
And-
It
fun,
was
right.
fun.
And
That's
that was
right
a
there.
great one.
That was Patrick's first show.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, and so I just felt community theater was where you met people and met so many wonderful people that, are still friends today. And
So if I'm keeping score right, before moving in 1983 to the previous theater on North Spring Street, you guys were in the middle school and Drager's Village Square
Yeah.
and
The mall.
the mall.
And
Am I
and another
leaving out?
production, we had a production, The Sunshine Boys at Whalen.
That's right.
Which
Right.
building in Lindsay
It
Gymnasium?
was the gymnasium,
Yeah.
right,
All
right.
right.
So
That's
that
right.
had
Forgot.
many challenges, along with the lawn chairs that we had to set up every night.
Weren't the
Because-
lawn chairs from leftovers from Tommy Bartlett and
Yes.
Dallas?
Yes.
Right.
They had gotten new chairs, so we got those in
Yeah.
time for
We actually got
Oklahoma.
those for Oklahoma.
Which
Yeah.
is what year?
That was during the 80s also, that was.
That was
Oh,
81.
summer of
Yeah.
'82.
Yeah.
The
And,
50th production, yeah.
yeah, and
81.
I told a little bit of that story last taping, but it was quite a challenge because of course it was in a gym. Fortunately, in the summertime, the gym wasn't used, so we had full use for rehearsals and show. And we had kind of a 3-sided, not quite in the round, but
Yeah, nearly round.
nearly
Yeah.
round. But the chairs were the big memory because, as Diane said, they were purchased from the Tommy Barton show, but they had been rejected for quite a while. They had been sitting outdoors
Right.
for years.
Some of them weren't as strong as you.
No, so we paid $1 for each one, which was probably too much. And then we had risers, and we set up this kind of semi-round theater. But as I mentioned last time, it was a kind of risky in terms of insurance because there was some webbing that wasn't as strong as others, and we had a couple of incidents when people kind of
Fall
fell
through.
the
Right.
chairs.
Yeah.
And then the other part of
Well, I'm laughing, but
the other part of the distinctive production for sound effects, we hung parachutes to try to help with the, because the gym was not ideal for acoustics at all. But, you know, that spirit of community theater, of solving problems, and part of our history. And I think in this building, we have a whole new set of problems, but that's a major part of doing theater and creative things, is solving problems, which is good for all of us.
We went from having, even with the thrust, the stage at what we call the Wisconsin Theater was pretty small. At Drager's Village Square was about a postage stamp. And then, so when we did Oklahoma, that's the first and maybe only time we've done a show completely, or that was pretty much in the round.
Yeah, I think Pippin had a more traditional.
Pippin used a
Yeah.
thrust stage,
Yeah.
yeah, with a backdrop. So anyway, that was the first show I ever choreographed, and one of the things I can think of about Oklahoma being a challenge is that being in the round, and almost in those days there were more so, a lot of teenagers, young adults. How many people were in that cast of
Oh,
Oklahoma?
I don't know, it was a typically
That was-
large musical
Yeah,
cast.
so, and it lent itself kind of to being in the round, because like square dancing and stable and that sort of thing of the Old West, but to try to rein everybody in, literally like, okay, we're gonna do the next scene, we're gonna, you guys, come on, we're gonna learn the ball change now. Oh my gosh, it was just so much work, like getting all these high-strung theatrical people to focus.
Because it's such a
When-
large space.
And when they're performing facing out. So you can't face, it was really challenging. And we just never did it in the round before, nor did we do it again. So that was really hard work, and it was my very first choreography, and there were about 40 people in that cast,
At least, yeah.
all dancing at once. So it was really, but I loved it. It was, yeah.
And you stuck through it? And you
Yes.
stuck with it until the transition into the new permanent theater?
Oh my gosh, yeah, so the next summer we did, I'm sorry, well, we can go back and forth, but the next summer we did Pippin in the junior high again, and used the risers again and the chairs, but that time we built a stage and had a curtain, like this, across the back of it, I think, or Doug Klitsky, I loved working with Doug Klitsky, and he had like a silver lame thing or something that you had to use like hair dryers to shrink it so that it would be a big mirror.
Or did you do that again?
Maybe that was,
It was Gypsy.
maybe that was Gypsy.
That was
Okay, I
Gypsy,
mixed,
yeah.
that was another one.
I think Pippin had
It just had a curtain.
Or-
Okay,
or-
never
Or a
mind.
set.
They're
They
blurring
just had a
together. I
set.
choreographed Gypsy too. Anyway, so that one was just more of a regular set, and we had the whole junior high cafeteria to hang out in between. So that was kind of nice because we weren't used to having that much space. Because back when we were in the Wisconsin theater, she talked about so when you went up this really skinny, wobbly set, because it was an old vaudeville theater, so it did have a makeup room, but they were like back to back. So the boys had to change clothes downstairs, just sort of behind a little half partition or something, and the boys. And then if we would often, for summer shows, have a tent awning back on the lawn
Yeah.
behind the thing. So you'd have to hang around outside, and that was our like auxiliary makeup place.
Right, right.
And, well, actually, this goes back into the 70s probably, but I remember one time when they did the Music Man, that the kid that played Winthrop was busy playing cards with the other boys and forgot to make his entrance for his main song, Gary, Indiana. I can't remember how they got out of that. They just had lived a while and moved on or something, but because we didn't have monitors.
No.
Now we have a TV every
Monitors
30
all over the
feet, and you
building,
can
yeah.
hear it all over, but not back then.
I was going to mention too, when you say we rehearsed in the mall, it wasn't always the same place. It was just whenever there was an empty store.
Yes.
So we
That's
had
right.
to adjust to set up our stage and our seating and everything each time separately because we just had to take what they had.
Right.
Yes. That's
One of the
right.
times, I think with Blythe Spirit, we started hauling things in, we had truckloads of stuff, and we were building the stage, and the mall management came and said, we never thought it was gonna be like this, with all this stuff. And we said, well, this is what we always
Theater.
do. Right? So after it was all up, they said, wow, you guys this is something.
Yeah.
They were really impressed then.
You know, and that is a positive, that we got out into the community so
Right.
people realized what we were doing and what an effort it was. So that was good to have that.
You know, like
Absolutely.
something Barb said before about that's where, fun, nice people are or whatever, but the other thing you said, like, we all do everything. As I look through these lists, I mentioned like I choreographed 2 summers in a row or maybe 3, I don't know, but when you're not, then on the other shows, you're doing the program, or you're at least finding a couple props, or you show up and paint a couple of days, and you can be on the board of directors and paint the floor. And there's just no, there's not very much, I'm too cool for that. Like,
Yeah,
everybody,
There are no prima donnas.
and even a person who has like
divas.
terrible stage fright, like Barb is hilarious and willing to learn lines, and, well, there's a few, yeah. Like,
Well, maybe, yeah.
we have our skills, but like Barb is hilarious and willing to learn lines and stuff, but also willing to get that. But if you're not, if you're a person that's extremely shy, we have a lot of stuff that can do. Okay, so that makes me think of another whole track, the difference of the 80s compared to now. I just was cleaning out a box, because I'm a pep rat, and this just coincidentally before this. And so here's my schedule, part of my rehearsal schedule for working. So you can see I did it on the back of a page that I must have ripped off of something.
December of '82 is what he said.
Yes, and it's all handwritten. And so what I'm getting at is this is pre-word processor.
Yeah, exactly.
This is pre-spreadsheet. To a lot of extent, these were pre-photocopier. So this was like typing on a carbon, like back when you thought that erasable bond paper was God's gift to humanity. And we
Our green room notes.
we
were-
literally had to cut and paste. I worked on a lot of these. And so, I mean, you can see the line here, where it was cut and taped down.
You can hold that up to the camera.
Yeah, it's like, so, I mean, it was cut and taped down, and then there's like, in the screen room notes, it says if you want to audition for working, call Kim Nordbeck, it was Nordbeck then, now it's Doyle, to volunteer. So we would have
No
phone
email.
trees,
Right.
no
No
email.
text.
But you know what, that's almost harder now, because now you have to stop and think, let's see, so-and-so will pick up a text.
Yeah.
So-and-so only does Facebook
That's
Messenger,
true.
so-and-so's not on Facebook. And, yeah, they have a house phone, they don't have a
This
house
would
phone.
be a good time to mention how the green room notes was our, as Ronnie was saying, was our way of communicating by mail. And I
Snail
think
mail.
we sent them out like every other month.
Oh,
for a
Yes,
while.
right.
yeah.
And
Even
I
every
have a
other
number
month.
of them, I'm hoping others do too, because it's quite a storage
Quite
for
a story.
history as
Mhm.
well.
Mhm.
Yes.
And, all of our communication, our announcements about our meetings, our board meetings, everything is on our green room
Numbering
notes.
tickets?
Right, hand
Yeah, by
numbering
hand.
tickets.
Hand numbering
Yeah.
tickets, yeah.
Oh, and the boards
Oh,
at
the
the
ticket
Century
boards,
Store.
right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
The ticket boards at the Century Store. Do you remember those, Tina? Do you
Yeah,
remember how those worked?
oh my gosh, it's not only the group in the theater, but it's the supportive community
Yes.
that allowed us to really do a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I think they appreciated our efforts, we put on good productions, and I think that's what they respond to, and they come and they're very faithful, they attend the shows, and we wouldn't be here without.
I mean, we had Century then with a hand, now we have Rechecks,
Rechecks.
that still does it. And just things like, we used the truck from Fletcher's or whatever, and
Yeah.
McKinstry's would lend us, I
Yeah.
mean, people lend us like their antiques and stuff, but also like McKinstry's might lend us a pretty nice piece of furniture.
Oh,
Do you
I
remember
remember,
something about that?
we did a show and McKinstry's gave us the chair, and I think it was, I can't remember, Alone Together, maybe. And one of the young girl part put makeup on her legs because she had shorts on, and she sat in the chair, and that was bad. That was really bad. That was
So
really.
what happened?
I can't remember if I don't think we had to buy the chair. I think they just paid to have it cleaned
Cleaned,
or something.
Yeah.
But I think that probably McKinstry's weren't quite as generous after that.
Maybe not.
You know,
They still-
and
they
she
still
never
are.
thought, and you know, you get on stage and it's hot and you're
Yeah.
sweating
Oh, yeah.
and stuff like that
Oh,
happens.
yeah.
Do you have a visual of those ticket boards? Can you describe what those were like?
I'm just vaguely, no, but I go back to 1967. This lady directed Bye Bye Birdie, and I was in high school.
Yeah.
And,
Oh my gosh.
I remember, oh my gosh, I remember that. And we rehearsed, I think, at Grace Presbyterian.
Yes, we did.
Mhm. And the dance steps, I'd never dance. I really don't sing. I don't know what I was even doing there, other than I was in high school and wanted to hang out. But I was dating my husband at the time, and every night patiently waited for me to be done with rehearsal. Patiently. And when it was all over, and he said to me, "Would you promise me something?" I said, "What?" He said, "You promise never to do another theater show." And I thought, that's okay, I don't care. So then, honest to goodness. And then I got real involved in the parochial school at St. Pete's. And we wanted to raise money, and so I was head of the PTO, the parent-teacher, PTA, whatever. And I talked them into doing this big fundraiser because I went down to Kenosha and they did shows of pop, and so we did the big event.
Big event.
And they said, "Okay, Tina, put your money where your mouth is. You direct one of the shows." I thought, I don't know anything about directing. I don't know nothing about person, no babies. So I called her back and I said, "Would you help me?" And she
Yeah.
said, "Yes." And we did a melodrama, and it was so successful. We did so many shows
How
after that.
many years did we do?
Oh, a
Oh,
long
I
time,
know.
and it was
Long
just so wildly
I
popular.
loved it.
People
It
are
just-
clamoring still, do it again, do it
Yes,
again.
Maybe we should.
yes.
In what year was that? What time frame was that, Tina?
This was all in the early 80s.
Okay,
Yes.
all
Because I had Molly, who was, I would take her to rehearsal in her little baby carrier thing, you know.
Yeah, and there was
And she
a lot of crossover
Mhm.
between the talents of the theater and who
Right.
performed that big event. There were a
Yeah.
lot of our people on the stage.
Right.
And that's where I first met you, Barb.
Oh,
You
is
were
that
Randy. I
right?
think that was
Okay.
the first time I met you. We were all crammed in the parking lot in the snowy weather trying to get out. And we were screaming and yelling at each other, and that's when we first met.
But isn't that amazing? I mean,
Yeah.
we worked, you and I can remember
Yeah.
sitting in your kitchen doing
Yeah.
shows and writing
Yeah.
skits and
Uh-huh.
stuff like that.
Mhm.
And then I kind of started getting involved behind. I would do a little bit of makeup, a little bit of costumes. I love set decoration. I love doing that. That was always so creative. And then Annette asked me if I would produce Annie. And since we'd worked so well together, I thought, okay, I can produce Annie for her. And I knew she would be very creative, be really successful. I had no idea it would be as big a project as it was.
It was big.
But I thought, you know what? I don't know anything about producing, what a producer does. So I thought, I think I'll watch a show from auditions all the way through. So they were having auditions on Golden Pond. So I went the first night of auditions and I sat in the back and I watched. And Kay Stoutswood was directing. And second night I went to watch some more. And she said, "Tina, you know, why don't you audition?" I said, "No, I'm fine. I'm just taking notes, you know." No, get it, you know. So I went up and honestly, I auditioned. Then I got the phone call. I got the part.
I
Then,
thought the call was going to be from Chuck.
no, then I had to tell him. I had to tell my husband I broke a promise that I had kept for, 20-some years. And I thought, how am I going to do this? I was absolutely sick to my stomach.
Oh dear.
And I really was. And so he was standing in the kitchen, and I turned to him and I said, "I have something to tell you." And I said, "I'm not sure how you're going to feel about this." I said, "I auditioned for a play and I got a part." And he laughed. He said, "I was wondering when you would get around to doing that."
Oh,
He knew, and he was been really supportive. And and that was my first show, and I thought, I didn't know what I was doing at that point, but it was a lot of fun.
There are
And
many people who come in and don't really know what they're doing.
No.
Yeah.
This is a learning place.
absolutely.
You know, sometimes, I was thinking about that, we, like, if we do a show that has kids in it, well, Gypsy's an example. We needed a few kids, and little boy dancers, but we needed, just even in the very beginning, there's a scene where kids are auditioning for this vaudeville production. So, we kind of said, well, we have more kids than we need, but what, I think we're gonna have a principle that we'll just use kids whose parents are also in it. And that got some guys to be, because we also needed men to be like the manager, the stage manager of the vaudeville house that was producing it. So you can get whole families to do shows. I mean, like I don't know, Do You Remember there was a lot of families in that.
Oh,
Do You
my.
Remember was our sesquicentennial production.
Sesquicentennial.
That was actually early 90s. But we probably started planning for it about 89.
we all took 50 years.
Yeah, we did.
And we all
Broke it into
wrote
50-year
a
segments.
50-year act,
And-
and then we directed the 50-year
Yep,
act.
and that had people in it from about age 4 to 84, I don't know.
And from
We had a horse on stage,
Right.
remember? We had the horse on stage.
Yes, so,
We had, when I did Guys and
A
Dolls
live
in
horse on
85,
stage.
the whole Woodworth family got involved, because
Oh, yeah.
Liz was one of the hot box girls.
oh, yeah.
And I needed someone to sing. I didn't have anyone who would accept the role of Arvide, and had that beautiful tenor solo.
Oh.
And so Liz said, well, why don't we ask my dad? And so Frank came, and he said, sure, I'll play the role. And so Frank was in it, and then one night Josie showed up. She said, well, I figured, the rest of the family's in the show, I might as well be. So she
She was
she
in
was
the
in,
Salvation Army Band, right?
what's that?
Right,
I think she was in the
Salvation
Salvation
Army.
Army Band.
Salvation Army Band.
Yeah.
Right.
And so she said, well, I figured the other two people were, I might as well be in it. So it was fun, and it also created a good place to go for after rehearsal parties.
Yes.
They,
The
they had
Woodward
a, they had a
household.
swimming pool.
Yes,
So-
that's kind of nice, yeah.
I used to babysit for Woodward's when they lived
Oh.
through my backyard.
Okay,
And I remember over there babysitting, and they were out with Van Harris, and they all came back to Woodward's. And one of the kids was kind of fussy, and Marilyn said, and she's rocking this baby, singing lullabies, and I thought I heard angels. I mean, it was,
Oh.
I thought, wow, it was so impressive,
Kim,
so
Guys, I was
impressive.
gonna say, yeah.
Oh, you just go ahead.
Guys and Dolls was a wonderful show, and there are certain scenes you always remember, like the scene that in Plaza Suite, the don't rock the boat.
sit down, you're rocking the boat.
Mm,
With
yeah.
Jim McMillan.
Oh, that was
Yeah.
That
Right.
was so
And
great.
John Kraft.
And John
John
Kraft.
Kraft was in the 80s
85.
version,
Jim
yeah.
McMillan played that role.
Yes.
And they did it a
Yeah,
couple
John
of years
Kraft,
ago.
yeah, oh,
And
God.
I did try to have Jim here tonight, because he was involved in a lot of
Oh,
shows.
man.
He was.
So I'm
Absolutely.
gonna try to recruit him for the 90s, but,
He was my husband too.
He and I were dance partners a
Yeah.
couple times,
Yeah,
so,
because
but
he
we
was in
graduated
South
from high school
Pacific,
together.
he was in
Yeah.
Guys and Dolls.
Yeah,
I-
yeah.
just the one- I'm just talking about the ones that I directed.
Can I tell this story on,
Funny thing
on the
happened.
camera? Like, thinking about this, how hot it was the summer you did, South Pacific, thank you, good memory. And it wasn't air conditioned, and one of the scenes, I was shaped a little differently then, I was younger, and we did it in like swimsuit, like a swimsuit top and shorts, and all the women that were in the Navy. And so there was a scene where we had to be in like frozen in this Vesuvian position like this. And Jim was my dance partner, so he's standing with his face like over my shoulder. And as we're standing there smiling for the audience, his sweat was dripping off his chin onto my shoulder. And we had to change then from this like, bare-legged swimsuit looking thing back into pantyhose. And I'm sorry if you've never worn pantyhose. To put them on hot sweatiness, that was challenging.
Well, it was the South Pacific in the theater building.
It was,
Yeah.
yes, it was
So this
very
is authentic.
appropriate.
Except for Sam, and Sam what was his role? He was some officer, and he had a long sleeve shirt with cufflinks,
Yes.
and everything was pressed, and he was the only one who wasn't perspiring.
Sam Sheldon,
Okay,
he was
fine.
Oh,
always,
Sam Sheldon, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure he was a
Yeah.
professional
Yeah.
non-perspirer. Oh my gosh, I forgot he was in that
one
one.
of the things I remember about South Pacific is I was way over on the stage right side, and there was a couple of things about that show. Number one was, we had to have the windows open.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And
For easy air.
also, we didn't start the shows till 8 o'clock.
Right,
We had
that's right.
no draperies on the windows.
Oh, no.
So when they turned the lights on, you hardly could tell. So we would do scene changes, you know, that were supposed to be blackouts.
Yeah.
And, you know, you could see everything, and we just kind of thought, well, maybe we should
We'll
just,
just pretend.
we'll just pretend, or maybe we'll close our eyes when we're doing it. But anyway, one of the times I was way over in stage right, and Jim and I, that's where we first met, and we connected really well, and we were really good at living with each other. I mean, we had all of our lines for the show down, but then we had a whole set of ad-lib lines that we were doing quietly to each other.
Yes, make sure that that's clear. That
Right.
It wasn't like everybody was hearing it, but it was
No,
the
but it was
two of
just
you
when we were
interacting in the scene.
We
interacting.
did like the peas and carrots,
Right.
you were
Yeah,
actually
we were
saying
talking,
stuff.
but we had actual
Well,
lines.
you have to.
We had
That's
our
the
own,
whole
we had our
magic.
own script that we
Yeah.
had developed. So we're over there, you know, talking like, what are they doing, you know, and just kind of looking at and then I heard one of my students down on the sidewalk down below saying, what's Mr. What's doing up there in that building with a sailor hat on? Because I could see
See,
through
they
the
were
windows.
outside.
They were on the sidewalk, walking past.
Oh, fun.
And so I never broke character.
I'm in a show.
Shout out the window, but all the pictures, all the guys, their backs are just wet.
Wet.
Yeah.
Because we
Oh,
never changed costumes, we just had the same ones, but there were some days it was really hot, and there were also times when it was quiet, but it wasn't quiet because you could hear the hum of the fans.
Yeah.
oh,
Because
yeah.
Oh, yeah,
everybody
that's
brought
right.
their box fans, we had them
Mhm.
all lined up in the back and up in the balcony, and so it was just,
The mosquito netting.
And
We
mosquito
had
netting.
gotten air conditioning by the next summer, which was Gypsy, and we were still trying to save money. 'Cause
We're always
Oh,
trying to
yeah.
say.
Yes, you know, we was po, like we couldn't afford the R. So, Marilyn Van Heeren played Mama Rose, is it Rose? And she's up there on stage in the spotlight. We're getting along pretty far enough that we're in full costume. So she's up there on stage in the spotlight singing, Mama's gonna dun, and just like, it was about 90 bazillion degrees, because we weren't using air conditioning during rehearsals, because, you know, it was just us.
Only during
We were saving it for
performances.
the
Yes, I love
performances.
that.
Yeah.
And Terry Schmidt, who was the president of the board at the time, she came in to watch a rehearsal or something. She's standing back there and she goes, that woman should not have to endure this heat
Right.
with a mink stole on. Turn on the
Right,
air
right.
conditioning. And the rest of us were so glad.
there was another part to that, is that during that winter, I think, Arlene Wiedenheft made the curtains for the building.
Oh, the
Yeah,
blackout
The
velvet
curtains, the velvets that are there now.
Yeah.
What year
Oh,
again?
for the
This would have
windows.
been,
Yeah.
let's see, it would have been like the winter of '84.
Okay.
Mhm, mhm.
And she made them in the basement. We got all, she was a
She was a
wonderful,
fabric artist.
oh, wonderful.
Yes.
She had her own
Fabric
business,
artist.
and she made them all in the basement, laid out all the fabric on the floor, on the tables.
Curtains that we have to
Curtains
this
that
day.
we have to this
Those,
day that are there.
those kind of
Right,
maroon
that's
or
right.
malt.
Yeah, I was thinking
And
that.
then
Yeah,
while-
yes.
Yeah.
Real
while
heavyweight to
we
cover
were
the blackout.
rehearsing, we were putting them up.
Oh.
Yeah.
So we were
Yes.
rehearsing on stage for Gypsy, and we were putting them, and Arlene was up on the top of the
Oh, I
scaffold.
remember
Scaffolding.
that.
Way up, she crawled way up, and then we put them all, and I don't know if they've ever been taken down. Maybe for painting one time, but otherwise they've been up there all these
Real
years.
challenge because they were arched.
And they were arched, right.
And then she also, I don't know if it was before or after, made these nice
Those
theatrical
ribbon
banners.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that was
Right.
Summer of Annie,
Yeah.
because.
Was it that when we had a dedication or something?
Right, we
Yeah.
dedicated, Michael Belanchi read a poem.
That's right.
Gina and John Kraft sang a song from Sunny the Park with George,
Mhm.
Move On.
Mhm.
It was a whole experience, and
It
the
was.
banners,
Mm.
Michael, I think, wrote the poem to go with the banners, so it was all one big production, and that was the Summer of Annie. Because I can remember they had to carry a piano down behind the building so they could sing the song outside.
Outside,
Mhm,
yeah.
Right.
Another evidence, as we're talking, I'm sure it's very apparent that the discovery of talents of all different kinds, all of the arts, comes to rest
Right.
at the theater. And one of the best things that happened to community theater in the 80s was the Lutzes coming to
Oh, that was
town.
nice.
Yes.
Nice of
Some
you to
good
say.
quality directing.
They
yeah, and building
contributed
and-
so much since then, but the 80s,
We were very
Diane,
involved,
you
right?
directed a lot of shows, and Patrick, I took over the supervision of the building and all the
Oh,
improvements
yes.
of the building, which was
You know,
a huge job. And so, so we're always looking for qualified directors, and this was a real blessing for us to have them come to us.
And another parallel, we need people today to help here in this
Right,
building.
Yes.
right.
And-
We still have a lot of little jobs to do.
Again,
and,
there's just a whole range of stuff. There's
Mhm.
office work, there's
Even more.
there's
Yeah.
artistic stuff, and it, as it gets, I was talking about all the stuff we did by hand, well, now it gets more technical, so even if your main thing is that you're I use this term with great affection, computer nerd, we could, there's the lights and sound are all like
Yeah.
computerized
You need
now.
that background.
But back then, I mean, like, I don't know, I think it probably was more in the 70s, I thought it'd be very cool to work on lights, and, so it was just like a mechanical follow spot, and, at the end of the 80s, or 70s, we were still hauling stuff around and plugging it all in, and you had to learn the layout of a whole new building every
Right.
time, and wonder if
Yeah.
you had places to safely hang the lights.
Yeah, I was gonna
and-
mention, you should tell us about stage 2, because you initiated that during the 80s.
Right,
That was so cool.
that was, stage 2, we said, why don't, we could be doing other things, because back then it was just the 3, spring, summer, and
Mhm.
fall, and there were, downtime, times on the calendar, and so we thought if we do something small, and, limited run, limited expense, it would be fun to get people into the theater more often. And so, yeah, we did some things, we called it stage 2, which meant you didn't conduct it like one of our main stage productions. You said, I want to do this, and hey, do you want to be in this? So you didn't have auditions,
Yeah.
you just got the people together and you put together, for example, I did Mass Appeal.
Yes.
Patrick and John Otten, which has a lot of funny
Small
stories,
cast.
small cast, for many reasons, whether how it was received in the community or how it's difficult for both Patrick and John to learn lines. Barb and I, his wife, Barb Otten, we used to joke because we knew the lines better. And there was one scene where you had to hurry up and go backstage and put this, I don't know what it's called, a priest's robe on, but for some reason.
Yeah, there was a lining in it, and if I would put my arm in it a certain way, it would get stuck in the lining, so it'd come out and look like I had a black arm and head. So I would practice over and over and over, putting it on, putting it on,
And
putting
Barb
it
would
on,
be back there.
back there, and she was my dresser and helped me. And I think half the time, it's still my arm down there. I had to go back on, I had to kind of hide that arm because I was doing a sermon. And, yeah,
And at one point, Barb and I were working backstage, and they were way off, and I said to Barb, just ring the phone.
So then there was a scene then where we were like,
Yeah.
John had to answer it.
But it was Mass Appeal, and we did it a couple of performances.
Mass Appeal, the female version. You and Barb could do it.
Yeah.
Well, the funny story is that Paczynski's asked us to do it for their Catholic church in Wauwatomi.
Wauwatomi,
And so
right.
they said, well, come out, stay at our place, on some lake, and so Patrick and John were gonna do, I'm sorry if I laugh, a rapid run-through of lines.
Is that like an oxymoron?
Yes.
It was like 2.5 hours.
And John and I weren't speaking to each other by the time
Oh.
we finished.
Oh, not that you're angry.
No,
I think
we were
you're
just so,
really
just
exhausted.
exhausted.
But that was just one of them, and other people joined in on the whole concept of stage 2, and I'd kind of like to do this, and we were talking earlier, we had an evening of, we call it acts and snacks, and we did 3 one-act plays, 3 different directors, and then we decided, I said, well, why don't we have refreshments in between while we're getting ready for the next one, and so we chose refreshments that went along with the play that they had just seen. And Rudy helped with that, Rudy Gaitan helped with that, and I was telling folks, one of them took place in a prison, and Rudy said, well, bread and water, I suppose, but we might not get people interested in that, but I think that one took place in Texas, so we had Texas sheet cake, and I don't remember what went along with the other shows, but it was fun, and it got people into the theater building, it got some people involved who didn't know if they could commit to a full-length
Yes.
production, or that they had
That was
the
kind of the mission,
talent,
was
it?
to
Yeah.
do that. or they wanted to test their directing wings.
Or experiment with something.
Right.
new.
That you think, well, not everybody's gonna want to come see this, but, yeah, it was a fun thing, and we still have things like
A
that.
little bit like Judy's show this summer.
Right.
Yeah, I think it must have been, because it was after Backstage on Spring Street, I think, that we had, what we called the Friends of PDQ Bach, which was
Oh,
a
yes,
similar
I
kind of
had
thing.
more.
We were like
Bach.
ambassadors of the theater, and we were in various times. We could do it from anywhere with 4 of us to about 16 if we were all there. And we usually sang a cappella. PDQ Bach is actually Peter Schickele has this imaginary character of PDQ Bach, was the youngest, like, no good son of Johann Sebastian Bach. But so he sings funny stuff. And so we were a comedy singing group, and we sang for church lady luncheons, we sang for, like the Elks Club, the whatever. I remember one time singing where they had us up at the front of a banquet, and so we were straight across, which means you can't see each other for visual cues much. And part of the reason we were a cappella is because we didn't necessarily have a phone. I mean, a phone. We didn't necessarily have a piano.
Brilliant.
We didn't necessarily have a piano. So we just, get a pitch pipe, but we couldn't hear each other. And I remember having to say, if you want to hear us sing, you're going to have to stop talking and clanking your glasses. But the other thing is we did funny stuff because we didn't have a commitment to have to rehearse and get really good. And if you're funny and you make a mistake, we actually had this shtick that we'd go like, we'd start out badly and miss our entrance and go, oh, let's just run over that again and throw it down and stomp on it and then sing some more. So, but we got paid, I don't know, something like $75 or $50 in the 80s, and then that just went into the theater.
And that evolved into what we call take notes.
Then they became take
With
note
on-call
after
players.
we moved to
On-call-
Madison.
on-call
Yeah.
Were you
Yes.
on-call players ever with us?
No,
Okay.
no, I wasn't, but when you were talking about that little boy missing his cue.
Oh, yeah.
When you directed Black Friday, Vera Collada and I were the maids.
Oh, yes,
And
right.
we're playing Trivial Pursuit downstairs.
Oh.
And we're having so much fun. And all of a sudden, Jane Lord leans between us and she says, shouldn't you ladies be somewhere? Oh my gosh. We ran up those stairs. I grabbed her tray, she grabbed my tray. We went out on stage and we are just, our bosoms are heaving. I'm standing in her spot, she's standing in my spot, and the whole cast just kind of looking over to see what was going
Sort of like the
on.
play noises off or talking
Right.
about all the things
Right, I
happening.
know.
Oh, yeah.
I remember Vera was a checkout at Century Foods. And I remember going through her line and, getting checked out, and I said, you really have kind of a fun voice. I said, you should try out for a community theater production.
Oh, my
And I
gosh.
think that was Black Friday.
I think it was.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it
So-
was. Oh, we had fun.
One of the funny stories about the on-call players is we would do things for service organizations, and we performed out at Old Hickory quite a few times. We put this little show together because many times we just Diane would many times write things just for a specific group, but then we put together a kind of a old-time radio show
Oh, yes.
that we performed at a lot of different places in Dodge County.
Well, and as far away as Slinger, remember?
Remember, yeah, we went
To
to Slinger.
the, whatever that restaurant is that looks out over a lake, it's famous, a lot of people know it, but it's kind of a nice restaurant.
So one of the nights, it was kind of cold and rainy and icy, and it was snowing and everything. So I had a full-size pickup truck at that time, where everything would be thrown in the back. But it was really windy that night, so we had music stands, and we had a lot of props. And Jim Greiner, who did so many great things for us over the years, he also helped us as well as he was the sound person. So we made all these prop sound things, marching things, and a wind machine and all this stuff. And so we're late, and we have to hurry up and drive out to Old Hickory. So we get out to
Near the memorial, the
Veterans
Memorial by the
Memorial.
cemetery. by
And
Oakwood.
all of a sudden, I look in the rearview mirror, I'm driving along, and Jim and Diane are riding with me, and the rest of the cast is already out there waiting for us to bring all this stuff. And I look in my rearview mirror and I'm seeing sparks coming from underneath the car that was right behind us. And I thought, oh my God, what happened? So we pull over, and the car pulls over. One of our music stands had flown out of the back of the truck, wedged underneath this car. So we're pulled over, and with all this stuff, and so we helped the man pull it out, and it was in about 3 different parts. And Jim and I were like, what are we doing? And so I said, well, I wonder where this came from. Threw it in the back of the truck, and we all just took off.
Oh my goodness.
Where did this come from?
Deny.
So we had a good laugh that night, and
Yeah.
plenty of drinks to follow as well. So.
Go ahead.
No, that's all right.
I was just gonna say, did somebody say something about there being a live horse on stage?
Oh,
We just
yes,
awesome.
right.
Do you
A
remember?
live horse?
A live horse.
That was early 90s, right?
Right.
Yeah, that
Oh.
was, yeah.
On the next chapter,
On the
right?
next-
Yeah.
Decade by decade.
We also had a full-size Henry Ford Model T on
Right.
stage.
Oh, is that right?
Oh,
Well, that
and
doesn't require
That was in the 90s.
cleanup.
That's coming up. So
That's
that's-
coming up.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
When
Another
Annette,
little teaser.
when Annette directed Bye Bye Birdie, the first show,
Oh,
she had a motorcycle come down the aisle of the theater of the show house. It was amazing.
Unbelievable.
It was just amazing.
We got away with a lot of things we probably would not have gotten
Yeah,
away
Yeah.
with.
I don't think that would fly in here.
Can I tell a couple more stories about the old building?
Yes,
All right.
yes.
Two to tell. One, we were talking about the ticket boards, and I hope we still have one of those, because it was great to have it in
I
our
think there
museum.
might be one in
There's
the
just
Yeah.
canvas and they have little
Right.
couches.
Little
Uh-huh.
couches for
Yeah.
everything. But when we moved into the new building, we had church pews. Nothing on them, they were just solid wooden church pews, wooden church pews. But we didn't have any numbers or, rows or anything, and so we thought, well, how are we gonna figure this out? So we thought, well, let's get like 4 people from the cast and have them sit in all the different pews. And then we put masking tape. We had that for several years, masking tape that, was like seat 1, 2, and 3 in the different rows. Well, what happened though is that they were somewhat small.
The people.
The people that were asked to
Yes.
sit. So our first opening night was like, 5 people can't fit here, only 4 can fit. So, but we had sold the tickets, so we had to have a few nights, we had to have folding chairs right on the end, which we could never do now because of fire regulations, but we made it work, and then we had to go back and redo the ticket boards. But, so that was a little problem, but the good thing is we were sold out just about every night.
Yeah.
People were so excited about us moving into our new building. The whole community was so excited about this, and Ronnie probably remembers, sometimes we would rehearse the dances outside in front of the building, just so people, when they were driving by, would see something's going on there. And we had a hand-painted sign that we put out front every night, coming soon,
Now rehearsing.
now rehearsing, and so
Well,
we did
also
that.
there was fresh air outside.
It's fresh air. It's so hot.
And no bats.
But as we were,
Or they
the
stayed up
the
higher.
other story is that when we were rehearsing, we sold the pipe organ. And we thought we were gonna get all this money for the pipe organ. It was beautiful, it was a huge keyboard. And at first we thought maybe we should keep it, we could play music before it, but we didn't have the room on the stage. So it filled up this huge space that now we call the garage, and up above is the loft that we used for many years for the orchestra. And so we advertised in this church newspaper. There wasn't the internet or anything, and there was a church newspaper that went all over the country, and so we put it in there, and we thought this is gonna be sold in no time. No offers whatsoever. So a church from Columbus did come over, and they said, we'll give you $100 for it. So we thought, well, okay. So they had a young seminarian student leading the charge, and they have the small church in Columbus, and they came over, and they were so excited. They were taking it apart, and they had trailers, and they were hauling it out, and
We were rehearsing
we
at
were
the same
rehearsing
time.
at the same time, South Pacific. And, I was kind of, working with them and saying, yeah, you got a really nice crew, and they're doing a super job. And the next night, they came back, and he, waved me over, and I walked over, and he said, we probably should have labeled everything and took some pictures of what we were taking apart. So we later found out they never got it back together, and it also had to be in a tuned space that was exactly the same shape as what we had at the theater.
Oh.
So it was built to fit that spot, and it was tuned for that spot.
Wow.
So that was an interesting story.
Probably
as
could have
well.
gotten that just for the brass.
We,
you know?
yeah, we probably, in the big picture, we probably
So-
given it to them.
This makes me think of another funny story about dance rehearsals. Eventually, we got mirrors in the basement. I think Marion Miller sold us her mirrors when she closed Miller Academy, but anyway, of dance. But, so it had a nice wooden floor, except, was it ever paved underneath? I don't know, anyway, when they eventually tore it up,
Yeah.
it was just like dirt. And so there's a wood floor and then dirt underneath. So it was humid. And it had a couple of fairly
Oh, yeah.
significant heaves in it. And I don't know if you can get this on tape. So just imagine if you're gonna go shuffle off to Buffalo, you'd have to like, don't trip on this heave. Because there were big heaves in the wooden
Right.
floor that you had
And
to
along with
dance
that,
around.
we needed money, so we rented the basement for a number of years, the Swinging Beavers,
Oh, yeah.
square
Oh my
dancing.
gosh, yeah.
And they would complain all the time about these heats.
Yeah.
You know, most of the, in the dead of winter when we had the heat on, it was perfect and
Mhm.
they loved it. And then in the spring, you know, we'd have these huge.
Yeah, in the summer when we did musicals
Yeah.
and needed to
Right.
dance.
You
Right.
fixed that though, Patrick.
Well,
Didn't
what
you
we
do that
did
for us?
is, we had to tear out that floor, and we thought it was dirt, but it was actually the pieces underneath supporting the floor had disintegrated
Oh,
because it had gotten wet so many times.
Mhm.
Because of course, our theater's on Spring Street, which means there
there
are
was a
springs,
spring, yeah.
including one underneath this building, there's a spring.
Yes.
That's still flowing,
Mm-hmm.
and so we ended up tearing all that out. What a mess that was, getting all that flooring
Oh
out.
my gosh.
And then they poured 4 inches of concrete on top of the original, and then it was tiled, and it was great today.
Well, it's great depending on your, if you're wearing
What
tap
time-
shoes
what
on
time
a
of the
tile
year, yeah.
floor,
Right.
not so fun.
Yeah.
But you know, you got tap shoes on tile or you got heaves on wood, so one or the other.
The other thing with an old building, all the bats that were
Right,
showing.
Oh,
lots of
yes.
that.
During performances, and you'd get all the little ladies in, and they take their programs and they put them up over their head, and they scooch down in their seat. And of course, the actors have to be right up on stage pretending these bats aren't even there.
Yes.
I
Oh.
remember one incident when this lady was doing that.
Oh, I hate bats.
We
I'm
were in the
terrified.
basement, I think meeting or cleaning or something, and there was a bat, and Tina, she just about.
I'm paralyzed with
She
fear.
just-
Paralyzed
Bats
with
are
fear
really
about
important,
bats.
but I don't like sharing my living space with them. you
I know.
There are a lot of them in that building. and
Yes,
so-
there
are.
And I remember sitting in the balcony once, this would have been probably the 90s because I was just back to see a show after I moved to Madison, but I happened to notice that it caught my eye, a bat came out from the hole in the ceiling where the ceiling fans connected
Right.
and started flying around, and John Landeck and Jim, it must have been a funny thing happened on the way to
It
the
was
forum.
Scott Thompson, because John Landek came back and he was so angry. Upstaged by a bat.
Yeah, there were these, yeah, so it was like this really touching song, and there's these two guys on opposite sides
The father
of the
and
stage,
son.
and this bat swooping around them, and so it's kind of hard, you know, sort of a moving song with the bat.
But our audience is commendable because they never left
Never.
it,
No.
not mass,
No.
because there was a bat in the
Yeah.
house.
No.
I
So-
remember I was
ABC.
decorating the set for a show, and I dragged a rug out of the baptismal font, wherever all that stuff is kept, and I'm unrolling it.
Mhm.
There's a
Ugh.
bat.
Oh, yeah, there was
Yeah.
a bat.
Dead?
Yeah, but you know what, it still scares me.
There,
I-
there,
yeah.
well, I have a low startle threshold. There were rats in the Wisconsin theater. Not, I never saw a live one, but we did.
No, we never had
encounter
rats,
a couple.
but,
We
dead
just saw
ones.
the evidence of the shoes
Yeah.
and so on.
Yeah, that was a creepy.
I wanted to kind of get back to our discussion about the outreach that we did in the 80s with On Call and the singing group and so on.
I remember a fundraiser, and it was like a carnival. And I
Tell
remember
us,
yes,
that's what I was
Dr.
going to say.
Samadani read palms.
Mhm.
And I had never had my palm read.
Oh,
And he read my palm and he closed it up, and he told me, he said, you have had 5 children and 3 are, you know, he knew I had a miscarriage with 2 of them, which, and he wasn't my doctor, and I had, but I was absolutely blown away. I couldn't believe
Those
that.
were fun, we had them
I think it was
on.
during Beaver Fest, wasn't it?
something like
Is there
that.
a-
Oh,
maybe.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think you're right.
That
Oh,
same weekend.
Because
But
we had a
lot.
lawn behind
Right.
the
Yeah.
church.
And
the
before the
Baptist church.
garage
But
was there.
the Telltale is the one
Right, it
that
was the
started.
Telltale that
the
started it,
carnival.
right.
Yeah.
I remember doing face painting.
Yeah.
We
all
used to be
kinds
able
of
to
things.
do, like a gathering before gala or whatever, before like opening night, there'd be food and things
How
like
that
that
started
outside.
was, we never could seem to get people to come to opening night.
Yeah.
People would say, oh, I'll wait for the review, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and we were always disappointed because we know the shows were good, come right away. So what happened was Cheryl Thompson, who got involved,
And Pat,
and Pat, yeah,
I always think of her as
Pat Rundy, but Cheryl came up with this idea, this let's have a gala on opening night. And we made a connection with Beaver Dam Hospital, a lady named Mary Kraft.
Oh,
And she was in charge of the food service at the time and made fantastic hors d'oeuvres. And they would deliver it all,
Yep.
and we'd have, and that really helped getting people there. And then we decided, with that success, we would have something outside at intermission. And we set up a tent every night. So that was a whole nother crew, because it was so hot in the building, even with the air conditioning, that we'd have everybody come outside and we had beverages for people. What we had to have I think I was in charge of that one for Annie. We had to set up this tent and go to McDonald's and pick up this orange drink.
Yeah.
This big thing of orange
Oh, yeah.
drink. Right, right.
And I think also we did it for 1940s Radio Hour because some people came in costume or dressed in the 40s.
Right.
What year was that, Diane?
The Radio Hour,
That was in
1940s.
90s.
Oh, that was into the 90s.
Yeah.
That was a great show too.
Yeah, that could be done again because people
It
love
could be,
Big
yeah.
Band
It's
music.
a very good and clever
Yeah.
show. But I was gonna talk a little bit more about Telltale, because that started
Oh,
in the
yeah,
early
absolutely.
80s too.
Yeah, we,
And that was a division, we called it a division of the community theater that gave an opportunity for children to put on shows. Before that, however, kind of connected to it, another outreach program was adults did
yes, I was-
shows and traveled to schools, not only in Beaver Dam, but the larger surrounding area. And I'll get back to Telltale, but it occurred to me too that I wanted to say that was probably possible more when women were at home more and both parents weren't
some,
working
is
so
it like
much.
Gene Triller did some of those?
Yeah,
But
Jim
then,
McMillan,
for example,
was
Jim
nice.
McMillan,
or
Yeah.
different work schedules.
Right.
But that was a really good representation too of the
Absolutely.
theater, always giving to the
Yeah.
community. But in terms of the Telltale Children's Theater, yeah, that started in the early 80s and just kept on building. So we'd have 100 children on stage. There's so much.
yeah, in the 80s, it would be like, you know, the sort of thing that you might do in your backyard with the neighborhood kids almost. They had some rehearsals in the afternoon, and then they would have sort of a little cardboard cutout for their backdrop, and the play cost 50 cents or something like that. And now it's, I mean, oh my goodness, it's a huge full-scale
And
production.
the philosophy, I was going to say, the philosophy always was that we would cast all children.
Yeah.
So we have a large stage, but that's even a challenge now.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was gonna say, and then Diane, with being the drama coach at high school, you know, you had wonderful talent coming in that, I think that helped your program, which in
Yeah.
turn helped the adult program and the theater. So it's kind of like basketball in Randolph. You start them out young.
I still
It
remember
is
watching Ryan Belangi
Yes.
as a tiny little boy down in the
Yes.
basement of the theater, the theater building. And I thought, I don't think he had any lines. I think it was all just reacting.
Yeah.
And of course, you know,
I don't know, what does he do now?
what's that?
What does he do now?
Well, he's a famous opera singer and he
A very
teaches
famous opera
voice and he's
Yeah.
travels all over the world.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
my
fabulous.
goodness.
He lives
Well,
in Chicago.
in Pippin, who was the little boy in Pippin? Who is
And
now?
Stelflug.
Yeah, Ben
Yeah.
Stelflew was the
Right.
little boy in Pippin.
Yeah, you're right, Tina, where they started things out in Telltale and then when they were in high school and my high school students were really involved in theater,
Yes.
either when they were in high school or when they were in college and they came back
And we've kind of referred to, you know, not that the people who are involved in theater are pointed toward a career,
right.
but we've had a good number of young people who have gone on to theater or theater-related careers, and they got their basic education with the high school and with the community theater. So we're really proud of that. In fact, we've had a couple of roots and wings shows that kind of feature, because there are a number of young people who become professionals.
Including Jeremy King.
Yeah.
Well, I just I went to Bayfield, which is the first time I've been up to the Superior Shore, and got to check in with Liz Woodward. And of course, you've been working with her sometimes up there professionally, but so Liz Woodworth introduced me to the bartender where we met for a drink as Ronnie was my first choreographer when and she was Baby June in Gypsy. But now Liz is like the major mover and shaker of Stage North in Bayfield, which is very artsy.
I call her the queen of Bayfield.
Yes,
Yeah, right.
It's not just Stage North, it's everything.
Yes,
Right.
yeah,
Sure.
and Big Top Chautauqua and all that, and she was Baby June. So, you know, I am a moo cow, that kind of thing. So it's a silly little song. So they really. I remember one time, somebody, Jim McMillan, who was able to do some of the shows, the daytime shows in the schools because he worked second shift. He works at he's worked for, I don't know, 30 years at Kraft Foods. We were hoping Jim would be here tonight, so I'm going to speak for him a smidge. We were classmates in high school. But anyway, he's an example of something somebody else said once in a summer show, like, what I like about hanging out in community theater, working in community theater, is like, where else does a farm kid get to rub elbows with the doctors or something like that? So you have, you know, if you think about socioeconomic class or whatever, you've got people that are doctors and lawyers painting the floor, and people that work nights in the factory having the lead role in a show maybe. And
What I liked about theater is it's like a 2-month commitment of
Yes.
your life.
Yep.
You come in, you're involved in a show, you meet wonderful creative friends, and then boom, the show's over, and you may not come back for a year or 2 years or whatever, but then you come back and boom, it's another 2-month commitment, and you meet different new friends
Yeah.
with
Right.
you know, more talent. And the other thing that has really struck me is when we were Beaver Dam Community Theater and we morphed into Beaver Dam Area Community, the talent that we are
Right.
drawing from other communities.
Absolutely.
It's exciting.
And we can learn from that talent. I learned a lot from you when you directed me, and I was your assistant from high school. And I learned an awful lot from watching and listening to you. John Otten taught me a lot, and Annette. I think between those, you three, I have learned so much, and I have applied that to my directing, and I've applied that to my acting on stage. And I still hear little snippets in the back of my head, you know, and
Yeah.
you're all there.
And we're so lucky to have, again, just sort of the way that people have different talents. Like Lois Lievenhagen, who's now kind of a minor celebrity for doing for years of doing the costumes for Mike LaCrone. She worked on costumes for Andy, she's worked on costumes and various things, but I'm thinking back to days like Lois, it wasn't,
Lola Mader.
Lola Mader.
Yes,
Lola
in
Mader.
fact, I was
And-
hoping
and-
she would come
Yeah.
tonight,
Yeah.
but she's in her 90s.
Oh my goodness. Well,
So-
and Mary Grisham was, I don't know, she was so much of a
Mary Grisham.
seamstress as an organizer,
Right.
but people with just organizational skills. And so like we've had people that are seamstresses who just do these fabulous creations and give us their time. Us is all of us. I mean, give time and you just couldn't do it. It wouldn't be the same quality without the people that are doing that stuff.
My mom came to see me in a show once, and she sat next to somebody I know, and I can't even remember who I had this conversation with. But I think they were talking about me, and then started talking about people in general having talent. And this woman said to me, "Your mother told me something that I thought was so profound." I thought, "Oh, sweet Jesus." She said, "Your mother said, everybody is given a talent. And it's your responsibility to find your talent and to share it with the world."
Right.
And it's our responsibility to help them develop those
Yeah,
talents.
I love, as a choreographer, I have just loved working with what I call like diamonds in the rough. When I choreographed, oh shoot, now I'm forgetting the name of it, Kim directed it, and it was Pirates of Penzance, there we go. When I choreographed Pirates of Penzance, for which I commuted from Madison to Beaver Dam because I wanted to work with Kim so bad. But, so we had, you need a lot of men in that show, and men are hard to come by, and theater. So we had a full bunch of policemen and then another full bunch of pirates. And most of them had never danced at all before. And I'm sorry, I have to keep saying it. So I was getting them to do this thing where they're going like, come and plow the field, and like lead with the hip. Like, Patrick, can you even lead with the hip yet? I mean,
No.
and they were, and they were like, oh, this is so silly. I feel so wussy doing this. And I like, I promise you, it will be great. So by the time they had it worked up enough to come and actually rehearse, instead of moving in the basement, because you got to make good use of people's time. So you'd have blocking upstairs and then dancing in the basement or singing off in another room somewhere. So when they finally started putting the show together in order and the pirates are doing this dance, like the prop girls and everybody would drop what they were doing and run and watch that scene because it was so cool. And it got standing ovations in the middle of the show a couple of times. The middle of the show, the audience roars to applause for that particular dance number. But those guys barely knew their right from their left foot. But they worked hard. And also you got to design it for what they can do. But so then they became dancers and they got to go around like, yeah, I danced, I got standing O.
Yeah,
And
a variety of people can
it's
find.
like a car mechanic,
They can find niches in,
Right.
whether they, if they're interested in, like you said, computer or
Mhm.
tech or organizational. We need a lot of skill in
Just
organizational,
organization.
and we've had many people go through the fundraising and helping with committees on fundraising, people from the community. Either they develop their skills along the way or they bring those skills to us. And the boards, how many people have
Right.
served on our board of directors, which is the
At some
mainstay
point,
of the
yeah.
theater. I think one of the unique things about our theater, and I know there are others, but I'm really proud of our theater for having a real strong organizational base. An identified mission, bylaws that are updated depending upon the circumstances, and people who are guarding that and guiding that all
Mhm.
along the way. It's not perfect, but I think for a community theater with volunteers, that has really been a mainstay for us.
I definitely found that when I moved away from Beaver Dam, that that just even the structure of the board, have like everybody here been on the board at some time or another? Yeah. So just having the structure where you're on for 3 years and there's 3 at a time and it rotates like that, so it's never all new. There's always people that have been around a while.
And there's theater people, and then there's
There's accountants and lawyers and, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was during the 80s where we decided we needed to have some business people
Right.
involved.
Yeah.
And that really helped because as much as we thought we knew everything about the theater,
No.
we needed some help
Well,
And
with
big
when
time.
we got our
Maybe
first.
it's not a secret that not all creative types are good at organizing and keeping books, or like to keep books, don't
I
know.
noticed in one of the green rooms that we originally called it theater representatives and consumer
Right.
representatives.
Oh,
Yeah.
for a while there,
And that
huh?
was a big change for us. I mean, it wasn't something that just everybody was real happy about at first, but once they got involved and said, you should be doing this and doing more marketing and, you should have a business plan and have a
Mhm.
season.
Mm-hmm.
We were like, yeah, this all sounds good. This
Because
is a good
some
idea.
theaters work where there's like sort of somebody that always runs it, and then it like rises and falls on their energy or something.
And then just it's the put on a show kind of
Right,
mentality.
exactly.
Yeah,
And even though,
Or
like I
like-
said, we're not perfect, we're always trying to be better.
they only choose shows that they can star in.
Yeah.
A person like that in
One of
different towns.
the other part is the patron membership.
Yes.
That's when I show our programs to people from other communities, they're like, you have all those people that have supported you all these years, and you have these categories, and we have like maybe 20 people that we can count on to give us money, and that's it. And I said, no,
Some
that's
from the very beginning.
some from the very beginning.
I mean, it really always was an area community theater, because as far back as Bye Bye Birdie, I know that there were people from
They came
Columbus
out,
and Wapahan and
Yeah.
that sort of
Sure.
thing. So
Sure.
So renaming it that just really claimed what was already existing in some ways.
And back then, they didn't have any theater in Columbus
Right.
and in
Or
Waupun.
not as
Now
much.
everybody has a theater group, and I've been involved in other community theater, Barb's been involved in other
Right now,
communities.
plug your show.
This
Yeah,
is a
Laramie
tape for
Project.
posterity.
In the 80s was the era that you decided to put area in there. There was a,
The word area
I
came
think
in
that
the
was in the
90s.
90s, right.
On the next episode.
Yeah.
But
Because it was after I was
in the 80s
gone.
that we realized that people needed, when we had the building, people needed to know how much it cost without
Yes.
being frivolous. I
Yeah.
remember in Guys and Dolls in '85, we published in our program the budget.
The budget, oh.
And it was
Wow.
$5,000.
Yeah,
And people were like,
And
wow.
We
Yeah.
didn't need it that much.
and
And
now
now
it's,
35 to 40,000.
yeah, it's at least 10,000 just for the rights. And
Well, the
Yeah.
bigger the auditorium, the higher
Yeah.
the ticket price, that all
Yeah.
figures in.
Royalties.
Right.
and all those
Oh.
things, yeah.
this is like non sequitur, but I'm trying to remember the name of the woman that wrote the book, White Dresses.
Mary
Oh,
Flum.
Mary
Yeah,
Flum.
so she was in the orchestra for, do you remember? And I was thinking like, should I have known her? She graduated in Beaver Dam just when I was a young adult. And then after she said she was in the orchestra, I could picture a tall, thin girl with a clarinet. So the orchestra doesn't sort of mingle with the rest of the group that much, kind of, because they come in late. And they come in like toward the end of the summer and.
Well, we
Get
mingled a
involved,
lot during South Pacific and
And
Guys
Guys
and
and
Dolls,
Dolls, and the
right.
funny thing happened on the way to the forum.
Yeah, well, and you,
Oh, yeah.
Too
Like-
much.
yes, I mean, in a way, it's almost more so now, because we're getting like more formal in a big shot theater, the orchestra's down in a pit. But in some shows, the orchestra, well, like for working, we had a kind of a mini orchestra, and they were pretty much on stage. And then they sometimes came, like the guitar player came over on stage, or the pianist, Lisa Weisensell, came over and played flute or something. Like, so, when we had that tiny little church theater, the orchestra was kind of right there some of the times, so you
Right.
had to be part of it.
I want Diane to talk about something that she started, came up with her idea, Boughs and Holly.
Oh, I was just
No,
gonna bring that up.
that's funny, because I
Just
thought
gonna
that
bring
was
that
a Kim and I idea at a bar one night, but anyway, it was
Well,
a,
I named it.
Right,
oh, yes,
Yeah.
okay.
Boughs and Holly.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
But, and then it was, I think we're looking at one, and I was just gonna ask you,
there was
Tina.
one program there.
Yeah, Tina, do you remember, you and I wrote a thing called Surviving Christmas?
Do you remember that?
No, I don't either. Written by Diane Lutz and Tina Swain.
Oh, that's
Yeah, there would
funny.
be real little
It's a good
skit, like maybe
partnership.
3-minute
Yeah,
skit,
good
but
writers.
But anyway, we decided that we needed to have something for Christmas, and
uh-huh.
and I know that the community, it was, people would come and they auditioned.
Right.
Originally, they auditioned, and every year it was a different couple, and it doesn't mean they had to be married, but I know this couple was
The
John
host.
Kraft and,
The MCs.
John Kraft and Dave Bowman were a
Oh, yeah.
couple in
A
1989.
duo.
I think I did it twice, that was fun.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Kathy and I did it, I
enjoyed
think like the first couple of years maybe.
Yeah, and then you and Jerry did it as
Jerry and
well.
I did it, and
Roger and Marilyn.
Jerry was an artist, and he would dreaded being on
Oh.
stage. But he drew for every scene.
Oh, I
He drew
remember.
pictures on stage,
Yeah.
caricatures.
Oh, cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
And then,
and that's got a whole thing now.
yeah, and one time, I was directing a show, and one of the minor characters, he just had a few lines at the end of the play. It was Arsenic and Old Lace. They were ill, and it was the night of the opening, I think. And I persuaded Jerry to do it because it was just a few lines. He was so nervous, but he was so sweet about it.
Uh-huh.
And then at the last minute, after he had built himself all up, the guy came through.
Oh.
So when we did Boughs and Holly,
Uh-huh.
I persuaded him to do that
Yeah.
little part on stage so we could fulfill.
So finally,
his
get
on stage.
yeah, but Boughs and Holly ran for 10 or 15
Right,
years.
and I
Quite a
think,
long
good
time.
show.
and it was a variety of things like church group that had a
Mm-hmm.
bell
Bell
choir. We had little kids who danced. We
Yeah.
had, I know the Swaz or
The
swing
one year that I
choir was.
directed it,
yeah, that's-
the guy that did he was a redheaded guy and he was
Oh,
saying,
Oh, yeah, the Red
Red
Raven.
Yeah, Red
Yeah, he
Raven.
did, and
He
he was
sang
in this one.
Blue
He was
Christmas?
in Blue Christmas and Santa Bring My Baby Back to Me.
Yeah,
But it was fun because it was pretty low key as far as putting it all together. And I
I
think
had like one rehearsal.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think what happened is, more and more people wanted to be involved, and I know some people said, oh, I can't go again, because
Yeah.
it wasn't necessarily uplifting at certain times, and.
Kind of ran its course, but it was great for a bunch of years.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Again, it was a thing that you could, every group, every act was responsible to get itself rehearsed. And the rehearsal was just like that morning, but it got so big that they had to do like 3 shows.
Right.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they were sold out, because
Yeah.
people say this kicks off our Christmas season.
Yes.
Right.
But Tina, you and I have to find that script.
I know,
Anyway, it was fun,
I remember
and
that.
So we're here in this new Beaver Dam Area Community Theater in the 1980s, as we've talked so much about today. One of the big things of the 80s was moving into
Right.
the old theater.
Yeah.
As you saw this progress, maybe you had a different role this time than you did last time, but as you saw this progress, do you see any similarities between
Absolutely.
82,
Mhm.
83, 84? What comes to mind? What was the same? What was completely
Money.
different that you noticed? Money.
The need for
Well,
money.
money.
you did a lot of stuff at the building to make it, to help transform it from
And
a
he did
church
here too.
Yeah, and
To
here,
the-
oh my
What
gosh.
was
to
that
the
like?
theater. And then here, he and Gary
Toric.
Yeah, Toric,
Torek,
and Clint
Slung-
Burns, who was his wife was one of the founding members of the theater.
Oh my.
And we had Bill Fleming helped a lot too. And
For this-
but you're
for
talking
this
about
building,
here.
For here.
But
But the other
The
one,
other building, that we had a small crew of people that worked. Jim Griner did a lot of wiring, and because we moved in and there was nothing, there was no sound system, there was no lighting. We had to upgrade the electrical at the old building because we had to bring power up from the basement, and we even got our own transformer on the pole outside, so that was a big deal.
some of that we had to do over a couple of years
Right.
as we could
Yeah,
afford
yeah,
it. So I
didn't
think in
all
a way
happen at
that's a
once.
parallel to
Right.
here.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Because
absolutely
when they
is
first,
Yeah.
the first show they did here in January, the building was barely ready for occupancy. And if you go upstairs,
Yeah.
it's still definitely classrooms, the roof is still
Still
leaking in a
up.
couple
Yeah,
of places,
and,
and plaster's
I was just
falling
thinking
apart.
about it because we're creating a very nice makeup room. We're
Mhm.
finishing that,
Mhm.
and we didn't have one of the old buildings
That's
for
right.
2 or 3 years. We just
Right.
would all be in the basement, and we didn't have dressing rooms at
So
the other.
it's a question, I think the similarities, it's a question of financial resources, but also of time and talent. Because we rely so much on volunteers to do it, that Patrick has been huge. Kind of coincidentally in both efforts, because you guys were gone for a while.
Right, yeah, we were
And
gone.
came
Back
back in
in
time
his
for
back
this.
with his
Jumped
hammer.
right in, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, me too.
And then the seats at the old building, I think, Roger Noel,
Roger.
he told me that he didn't do that until 2000. I thought it
Yeah, I
was
thought it was
earlier than that.
We sat in pews for
Yeah,
that long.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
but we got
yeah.
padding
We got
on.
padding,
Well,
so
we carpeted them,
we
is that
carpeted
it?
them, yeah. So we had a volunteer group that came in, and we put foam and then carpeted them. And that's what we had until we got, until Roger did a wonderful
Came in
job
and
getting
put
all
it-
of those.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The
We did
seats.
consider bringing those over here, but they didn't quite fit the
Right.
design,
That's
so.
good.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good thing.
When Annette directed Annie, she double cast
Mhm.
all the orphans, and she double cast Annie, she double cast the dogs. And we had so many people wanting to
Yeah.
buy tickets, it was a nightmare.
It was
It was-
neat.
And so we were
We
glad for the
slept
few,
in
because you
office.
could get a few more in there.
Yeah.
Oh, it
Yeah.
was, what a nightmare, and that was way before all the
Oh,
headphones
yeah,
that you
no,
can
we
talk
didn't have any
between the
mics, no
No.
mics at
stage
all.
manager, and so, and that would say, go up and tell the lighting person. So we would be backstage, I would have to run downstairs, across the basement, up 2 flights of stairs, and try to have enough wind to tell the lighting guy whatever. And then you have to go all the
When
way
we
back
finally did get the
again.
headsets,
Yeah,
we couldn't afford really good ones. So we went out to Radio Shack that was out at the mall at that time, and we got them, and they had
That's a
like
good story.
a couple of channels, and Jim Griner, who was he was our tech guy, if he needed some technology, he would be the person you'd call. So we got it, and he was sitting up there, and he said, I'm hearing a baby monitor. So he kept the headset on and knocked on doors all around the
Oh my
theater
gosh,
and said, do you have
Baby.
a baby monitor?
change
Because
the
interfering with-
frequency.
Yeah,
Oh.
so we ended up having to go back and get another set that had some different frequency because the baby monitor kept hearing a crying baby on the headsets.
When you talk about people bringing different things to the table, you know, he brought technology, he would have conversations with me, I had no clue what he was
Yes.
talking
We
about.
were talking about it today.
Yeah, but I was so thankful that
You would
he was good at what he did because he could
Absolutely.
figure it out.
Yeah.
You could make anything, you could figure it out.
He just sent a beautiful note via Facebook, I think, saying that he had seen the first 2 decades and how much he loved it, and I invited him to come so he can help, you know, he can sit in.
Well, I'm gonna
anytime.
salute him right here because
Yeah.
there's so many things that he helped me with. And
Oh,
even when he
yeah.
moved away, he'd come back for a week. And
Wow.
his mother would say, what project are you gonna have Jim do? Because he's all excited, and we'd work over Christmas vacation on a special project at the theater.
Yeah, because there'd be tech people, lights and sound kind of things, and like, I didn't really speak tech. Now it's even way different. So that's a thing that's like so different.
It's a great opportunity to learn tech.
This is so
Yeah,
computerized.
yeah.
And,
Right.
I mean, when I started, so this goes back to what, late 60s, or early 70s or whatever, and did sound. We still were using, you know, a box about this big with reel-to-reel
Right.
and putting in little tape to show where the next sound cue was. Push the button, push the button.
Yeah.
And,
Problem solving.
you know,
Yeah.
and in some ways I'm like, well, that was kind of easier. You at least know where you were, but now it's all on the computer.
And there were no microphones on
No.
stage,
No.
and
Oh,
maybe
heavens.
probably
No.
not even before the 90s. That would have
No,
been
but we didn't
another
need them.
future
We
episode.
didn't need them.
People
Only-
knew how to project in
only,
those days.
Yes.
In Gypsy, Lisa Winkler?
Winkler, right?
Yeah, and it just wasn't loud enough, like, let me entertain you.
She had a
or-
very soft voice.
Right, yeah. And I remember,
Yeah.
Sam, this is Sam Shelton.
Sam Shelton, but it was Mike Helm, is that a person?
I don't know.
Or
Yeah,
Helms?
he, Helms,
Like,
yeah,
he had
he
a-
worked at the
he-
radio station
It was
at
like
that time.
magic,
Yes.
because he had a wireless microphone.
Wow.
And he,
Wow.
and he brought it to every performance in a case, and he handed it to Sam, and so as Lisa was dancing around
Yes.
singing, Sam was in a tuxedo,
That's
singing the microphone.
We had to
in her
work, we had to
face.
choreograph that in, so
Yeah.
Sam was like this
And you'd
elegant
think
guy.
it was like, you
and
know,
with
a
the
nuclear bomb
Yeah,
in
he
there or
should have
something.
had a chain on his wrist.
She was gypsy and
Yeah.
let me entertain you. It was just too breathy.
And
But-
so,
Right.
You were
Yeah.
asking
That was the
about
first
the
time.
parallels. I think one of the big parallels is Patrick was talking about all of the excitement of the community coming to our shows in the old building. And now the same thing happened with the
Right.
excitement here with our open house and our New Year's Eve party. And still now, people are so excited about the theater. And many have not yet been in here, and they're imagining it's still a gym with the old stage. So we need to do a shout out, this is far from an old gym.
right.
Yeah, I had somebody just recently say, well, you know, you didn't have to do a lot in the building because you already have the stage and you could put up chairs. And I said, you better come, you know, I'll be here next week, you know, and come
Was it
visit.
the end of the 90s that we started using the high school auditorium for summer shows?
It was right after Pirates of Penzance, so
Okay,
that was the
yeah.
last summer show.
So
we
would that
did.
have been the 80s then?
No, because the auditorium wasn't built until
Oh, that 92.
91, I think.
Well, I
or whatever
think
you do.
Joseph was one of the first ones up there.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
was in 95.
So you did summer musicals in
Oh,
the
in
new-
the high school,
in the old
that was it.
theater.
The old theater.
Right.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Same
40
product.
people dancing
Yeah.
on stage.
And
Oh, yeah.
tell the tale, you know, mixing, you know,
Yeah.
their
Yeah, trying to
their time
balance the
periods
schedule.
and-
Yeah,
Yeah,
we did full
overlapping.
summer musicals on that thrust stage.
So you finally move in 1983. Is it a sense of relief that you've got your own permanent home, or is it a sense of anxiety because now you've got this whole new set of challenges in bringing this theater up to where it needs to be?
Well,
Ordeal.
both,
about,
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, we're so excited, but
So,
then,
such a relief though that we didn't have to traipse around.
Right.
Because it was hard to keep your audience when they didn't know
Exactly.
where you were.
Ronnie and I were talking, we were in a play together, where I first met Ronnie. This was in the spring of '82, and it was the How to Rise Again. Opening night, we had 6 people. And just because people didn't know where we were gonna perform, and they just, you know, they were used to going to Wisconsin, and we didn't know where we were gonna put the next show on. And we knew we wanted to, keep going, but we never knew from time to time where we'd perform. And the 6 people were was the reviewer and his wife and the 2 children and 2 of our really good supporters and
Been actively involved.
actively
in
involved for
Yeah.
many years and
Gail and Marie Kettler.
Yeah.
were really involved back
Gail,
then.
who now sings opera, I
Yeah,
think. and
right.
Mari's a veterinarian.
And so we moved their tables right up to the stage
Yeah.
because it was supposed to be a dinner theater too.
Yeah.
And then the people that were doing the dinner theater said, maybe we should rethink this dinner theater thing. We got all this food, we got 6
Yeah.
people here.
Yeah.
So we had to make some modifications.
Was
I
there-
got you beat, I did love letters once, I think there were 2
Oh, yeah.
people in the
Oh.
audience.
Oh,
That was in the
yeah, I
80s.
remember
That
those.
was that a stage 2?
You did
Uh,
that, or
yeah.
you did
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I did it once with John Ottner, and then I did it again a couple years later, and I did one night with Dan Bell and one night with John
Yeah.
Crack.
But that was a
Okay.
stage 2.
Well, you're
so-
like Barb with all these partners, these
Yeah.
husbands.
I think that's why my husband didn't want me to get
I've
involved.
only ever been married to Lee Schmidt and Larry Van Frank.
Well,
Yeah.
one of the things that the 2 buildings have in common is when we moved into Spring Street, there were people who had been members of the congregation.
Yeah.
And they, looking to see what the transformation
Yeah.
of their church to a theater, and here it's even magnified, I don't know, 100
Yeah.
times, people saying, I went to school there.
I
Yeah.
think Dave
Yeah.
Bowman had been a member of that congregation.
I know
Yes.
Charlie and
Yeah, I
Judy
think he
McDonald,
was.
when they
Right.
The
first moved.
McDonald's were.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
It
it's
was a
like,
very active
because
congregation.
we've transformed 2 different spaces and people who were involved in it in its original
I love going
purpose.
up on 3rd floor
Yeah.
and looking at the mural I painted on the wall when my daughter went to
Yeah, it's
kindergarten.
still there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
another
Keep
thing
that.
that, from when we lost the use of the Wisconsin Theater, we felt nostalgic about that. Like, there's this esprit de corps that you build when you have to, like, report in at 10 o'clock in order to build the stage and stay there till 6 in the morning, and then be back by 8 to run the dress rehearsal. That's how we did it in the old vaudeville theater. And then, so that was just a commonality that everybody pitched in and worked together. And then when we were kind of scattered around, it just didn't seem right. So then, and people felt a little nostalgic. I mean, I guess I did, about the church, losing this church, and golly, there's so many good memories. I mean, the 80s were like my peak season so far in community theater, though I'm still kicking.
There's one memory that I am glad we don't have to relive, and that's watching people like Bertha
Yes.
Proctor
Oh,
and
yeah.
my
Trying to
mother
struggle up those stairs.
So glad you
struggle
brought that
up
up.
those
Yes.
stairs.
Or
So-
carrying them out.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, so
Yeah.
we feel a little bit of nostalgia, but that, for me anyway, that evaporated pretty darn quickly. See, wow, look at
And
this,
now
like,
we have
real
those
space.
handicap spaces, and rarely do you see them empty.
Right.
No,
Or coming
very,
in.
yes, I
Yeah.
mean, people with ventilators have come to see the show.
Yeah, it's great.
This may be a question for Annette, but maybe for all of you. How was the fundraising different from 1982, 83 to
Well,
2012
I'll address
through
that.
20?
The amount of money.
Tens of thousands to
Oh,
millions?
Minus inflation.
We hired a professional fundraiser in, I think it was 83, because we knew there was no way we could survive without air conditioning. Because initially we had a small unit that Murray Funeral Home gave us.
Donated.
Wow.
They donated it. We had it refurbished at Surefire, and we
That's
had,
for guys and dolls.
and we had a picture in the paper of this air conditioning unit being placed, thinking this is gonna help, because people are saying, I can't come in the summer, because if I sit up in the balcony, if I'm, it's gonna be so hot up there. So we said, we gotta have this fundraiser. So we got together, and like I said, we hired a professional fundraiser to help us run it, and we were going to have this sum of money that we thought would solve all of our problems, $200,000. Thinking that if we got that, we would be, set, we could remodel the whole building. And it was a major project, lots of people got on board. We have to thank some people. We have to thank Andy Bissonette and John Ralston, who really pushed this fund drive and knew a lot of people, and are still doing those kind of things in the community. And we didn't get quite 200,000, but we were able to do a lot of remodeling of the building. And the main thing is, we got new furnaces, and complete air conditioning for the building, and upgraded the lighting, and did some other things, and, so that was big, but still, a lot of people were involved to get those, $1, $2, and I think that's a parallel too.
Right,
because
right. The grassroots
The
effort is
grassroots
strong.
effort,
Yeah, again, indicating how much the community supports us.
right.
I was on that committee too. I wasn't chair though, and I give a lot of credit to my co-chair for this fundraising, Jim Flynn,
Oh,
who's
yes.
a master. And, but there are parallels for sure. But I'm always thinking that, this has changed our community theater. We have much greater responsibility, so we need to use this building as much as possible, rent it out, get tour companies in here. But we also need to remember that our primary focus is our mission to offer true community theater. So it's kind of a balance of how we become almost a business in a way, and the community theater at the same time. I think it's fairly unique in Wisconsin to have
Oh,
that
yes.
setup.
There are only a few that own their own.
Yeah,
building.
I'm excited about it, and I think we can do it, but we need to always look at the future and how we can continue to develop ways to use the building.
Right.
Some don't have any community theater buildings of their
Very
own. There
few.
do now.
Very
I
few,
bet
yeah.
Over the
I bet
years.
there's
One we'd
less-
like to get rid of.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it's for
less
sale.
than 6 in the entire state that actually own their own
Yeah.
building,
Wow.
they totally have responsibility. Some are community
Wow.
buildings where they share with another group.
Yeah.
But there's another parallel is that we bought the building, original building on Spring with a land contract,
I
which
mean, it
meant,
was scary. It was a very
Very
scary
scary
decision.
time.
I was on the board when we decided that. I was
and
like,
so
oh
we
my God,
paid,
such a commitment.
paid something each month. And then we had to make a balloon payment, which meant that was the principal payment in 5 years. And at first we were like, all right, and all of a sudden 3 years went by and we thought, oh my God, we have to pay this money off. And then that's when we got the fundraiser going. So part of that 200,000 went to pay off the mortgage, the debt. And so parallels here, we still have some debt to pay
And that's
off.
where we are
Yeah.
here.
Right.
We raised, almost 3.3 million, but we have about 350,000 to go, 400 maybe.
Compared to what, 250? Would that have been the total? 50 for the building and then 200 for upgrades and,
Somewhere in there, yeah,
Yeah.
right.
so really you just added another zero.
Yeah, 'cause we had an initial fundraiser when we bought the building, but we went around to people and said, we really need some money just to get us going, as we had to put in restrooms, which seems like a strange thing, because in the other building, there were 2 tiny little restrooms under the stairs going down to the basement.
They're
And-
scary.
And so,
Spiders.
we needed restrooms, and we didn't have exit lights, we didn't have fire extinguishers, the
So there's
church
some of that bringing it up to code
bringing up
stuff.
the code, right?
Which is a lot of what happened here.
Absolutely,
Like,
right.
to just at least make it
Big time.
usable,
Right.
it had to be up to code. And in fact, I think for the open house, it was like maybe we had the fire marshals sitting here because we weren't quite up to code yet for that first
Or
January
we were
thing,
right just there.
We just
Yeah.
made it
We were
that
just-
day. But it was the same thing with the other building, there were some things that we had to upgrade. One of the major problems at the other building is the railing in the balcony was too
Yes.
low.
Oh, yeah.
And here we have South Pacific selling like hotcakes, people were so excited. And the building inspector and the fire chief came and said, you're not gonna be able to use the balcony. And they said, well, just, close it off. Well, we've got it all sold, what are we gonna do? And they said, well, we're not architects, we can't tell you what to do. So I thought, well, we gotta do something. I said, just give us a plan. They said, that's not our job, you have to hire an architect. So I said, what if we build a little fence, like 2 feet away from the railing, so nobody can get even close to it? And they said, well, that might do it. So we thought, we're gonna build this, and then what if they say no? So I grabbed a couple people from the cast, and we went to the old building and worked in the basement, and built this thing out of, chicken wire, whatever we could find. It looked terrible, and put it up, and then they came and looked at it, and they said, okay, they signed right off. And- But that
Didn't
was,
somebody, some sort of influence get involved with that?
well, we did, because it's kind of an interesting story.
We don't want
Did
to
you go back down to the low thing, the rest
Well-
of the tenure there?
It was there until we had the big fundraiser, because Brewer Metals then built the railing that's there now. So it was there 4 or 5 years. But kind of a funny story for some people, but I'm going to tell it anyway. The reason that it was approved is because we had the entire balcony filled with influential people from the community. So the building inspector and the fire chief came in, walked in, and I said, well, let's just go up and take a look at it. And they got up there and they walked in and they were like, so John McKinstry was there, I'm trying to think of some of the other people who were there, Andy this and that.
Yeah.
And so they didn't say a word, they just sat there. And that's why they signed up. So that's the real story.
Sometimes it's what you know, and sometimes it's who you know.
But the neat thing about it is that showed how much support there was in the community. And it wasn't like they were trying to keep us from doing, they just wanted the building to be safe.
And speaking of the continuity of the fundraising, you mentioned John McKinstry. He has been the #1 supporter
Absolutely.
financially and other ways. With our first purchase,
Since day
right
one.
from
Right.
day one,
Day one.
in each step of the way, he's
Absolutely.
been our angel.
Absolutely.
I mean, day one, like 1960, whatever.
Right,
Kind of hasn't even.
And
So,
their
from the
family
beginning.
too, I mean, the whole McKinstry
Yeah.
family has been so
Yes,
supportive over the
and
years.
so many others.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and then tell us about that going, because did you go out in the community to fundraise for both the old theater and this theater? I know you were actively involved
I
in
was
this
on
one.
both committees. I can't remember exactly what my role was, the first one. I may have been more preparing materials and so on. I can't remember. I must have done some
Fundraising, though, and getting out in the community was an equally important part in the early 80s.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
And like
absolutely.
everybody had to, it's not, asking people for money is not always
No.
like in the same skill set as singing and dancing or
Right,
whatever,
right.
but everybody kind of got
Yeah.
lists
We
and
got
you
our
had to
pledge
call
cards.
people
Yeah.
and ask them and make appointments and see if you could get friends of friends of friends to
I
donate
I can
something.
remember Dennis Anderson and maybe it was John Ralston sitting on my porch
Yeah.
and, talking about how much money we wanted to.
Mhm.
And I thought, they must think I am. Yeah, this is young Beaver,
Yeah.
it's like,
I think John Landick was on that committee.
Yes, he was on
Yeah,
it.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
Dick
was also on
Dick
this one.
Hedberg was.
And John
in,
Landick was in South Pacific, so he
John
probably
Landick
was in
was
South
in,
Pacific.
yeah, he was in
Yeah.
a number of shows.
Right.
I realized
Yeah.
more than I realized as
Bye
I
Bye
went
Birdie,
through the
yeah, he
programs,
was in
yep.
that.
When did the
Forum.
old theater begin to feel like home? Like everything had settled in, you had all the pieces in place, the chicken wire was out?
Yeah.
or what
Yeah.
Well, I
did
don't know, I mean,
Was it right away?
having grown up in community theater, like since I was 7, it felt like home pretty much the first
Yeah.
thing. I mean, I kind of missed the old thing, but no, right away it was nice to just be able to rehearse on the stage that you're gonna perform on, and you don't have all the parts built until maybe dress rehearsal, but yeah, I would say it pretty much felt like home right away, because
Right
it was
away.
so good to settle
It's
in.
the people who make
Right.
it.
Yeah,
feel
it
right.
really is a
That's
lot
what
of
it
the
was.
people.
They had so much enthusiasm and they were just, let's do it.
Yeah, and you're gonna sell tickets and people are gonna come, and finally, after traipsing around, something that just occurred to me when we were talking before is those years when we were gypsies of traipsing around, I think it must have been kind of hard to get directors too, in a way. I mean, that was among the things, because if you don't know, like, you don't even know, as being the director, you'd have to be more involved in where are we gonna set up, what are all the logistics stuff, and having your own place, you know what the logistics are. So that
Yeah,
makes a
but
difference
there's
too.
been
And now
some-
they've got stacks of people waiting to be directors, so.
Hopefully that'll
Somewhat,
continue.
yeah.
Yeah, people, I think the new theater does make others
Mhm.
think they'd like to direct here, yep.
But I mean, it helps to know what your resources are, what you're working with, and the space use, I think. Because there were some kind of slim years there when we were in the early 80s when we were traipsing around.
Well, that was a harder challenge too,
Yeah,
that.
yeah, and all the traipsing around stuff.
So we look at the 80s as this milestone year, the theater getting its own place, the establishment of Stage 2's, Telltale Theater. It was also the 25th anniversary at some point during the 1980s. Tell us about the 25th anniversary. What do you guys remember?
Well, we mentioned that a little earlier, the bench was the star of the show in the ball.
Yeah.
And we just had performers from the past shows do bits and pieces, and we connected it all together with a script. And Roger Van Haren was the MC, and the bench talked to Roger Van Haren throughout the show. And the mall let us use, we had a dance afterwards.
Yes.
We
Big
used the
band
whole.
dance.
Big band
I think we
dance.
had
Oh, that was
dinner,
really good.
too.
Dinner also,
I think-
catered dinner.
Yeah, and
I
we used the
I
larger
choreographed
area.
Right.
pieces for
We
that.
built our own stage.
So
right
it
in
was,
the
it was
wall.
like a variety, we put on
A
a variety
variety.
show, and
Yeah.
then there was some commemoration and some
But it
speeches.
was another setup of
Yeah,
the
but
theater.
Yet another way to set up something.
What did it mean though at that point? Not so much the
Oh,
the actions
logistics.
that you guys did. What did that mean to you guys? You guys had made it. You were here since the beginning. What did it mean to have 25 years of this now 50 plus under your belt?
It's 55 now. 25 seemed like monumental that
Right.
we
It did.
we went that long.
Yeah, because there are many
Yeah.
theaters
Wedding
that,
anniversary.
like Ronnie said,
Yeah.
that had, kind of have their ups and downs, and, so some of them just, they might go for a couple years before they do
Yeah.
another show.
Keeping in mind that that was pre-internet, so it was a way to really like beat the bushes and find where people were living now, and everybody check your Christmas card lists, and like invite people back that hadn't been involved for a while, so it was like sort of old home week in some ways,
And we used the green room notes. I'm glad that Annette brought these,
Yeah.
because I used to really be excited again.
Yes!
Sometimes I'd even written part of it, and I
Very
still like to
easy.
read it.
Yeah.
And, so it was fun,
Read
and
it
we had
cover to
people from all over the country that got them, and were disappointed if they didn't receive their green room
Yes,
notes.
that's true, I kind of forgot, and we don't do that
It just,
anymore,
it certainly represented how active we were. As I read through those,
do we? Mhm.
we were just doing stuff
Oh, yeah,
all the time,
time.
which kept us
There
alive.
was a lady in charge, her name was Lou Stungle, and she
Mhm.
took that on, and she called them full, staple, and mutilate parties.
Oh, yeah.
And then we'd get together at the theater and put on sometimes
Oh,
at
yeah.
people's kitchen table,
Yeah.
put on the stickers and
Yeah.
fold them, and we had to hand fold everything.
Yeah, here's one from
Yeah.
'86, Ronnie Harper Miller, that's my name then, publicity chair. And so, I mean, I had a 1-year-old then, so she would have been 6 months old then. So that was one of the kind of jobs that, we talked about being able to do this stuff in all phases of life. So this was a job you could do from home with your 1-year-old and, get people involved in all kinds of ways.
You know who we haven't really talked about, and I don't know if you talked in the past sessions, the Black Beauties.
We haven't.
Oh,
You know,
They came up more and when we
That was
went to
the
the high
90s.
school.
Yeah,
Right.
that
Right.
evolved in the
Yeah.
90s, yeah.
But,
The
but
next
that-
episode.
Right?
Yeah,
Next
yeah,
But proud
it's
of
good to
people.
bring that up,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
'cause that's
I mean,
the-
again, that's the kind of thing,
Lovely
like,
era.
there's room for everybody, there's people who, that move the props, sometimes in a dark blackout between scenes, sometimes it's kinda on stage, but the Black Beauties would have been like, the people dressed all in black, scurry out on stage, move something. I remember having rehearsals just to move the props for Cactus
Oh,
Flower,
yeah.
so that we could get it done quickly, because the last thing you wanna do is get people like losing their attention, because you have a 5-minute set change, so,
Yeah, and getting back to the celebration of 25 years, I think what's reflective too of the strength of our theater is we always want new volunteers. They're a really important part of our theater, but you'll also see a thread of the same people who have stuck with us for many, many years and given us the stability and to pass on information and education to others.
yeah.
I think that's a
Well,
really, yeah,
like
for
in
50
that-
I mean, I can
Yeah.
You've been the longest thread of
No,
all.
I
are.
No, but even, to look back on programs 55 years ago, you still see names that are here today.
Yeah,
And some of those people still come to the shows.
yes,
That
and
was
now
all
they're
way-
coming
Or
to the
they
shows,
come
and we
home,
find a
or
way
their
to bring them
kids.
Or
in.
their kids, right?
Or
Yeah,
their
their
grandkids.
kids, their grandkids,
Absolutely.
yeah. So, well, some people have been in the same role twice, like you said, Gene Beneke was in the same role twice, like Jim McMillan's been in the same show, not necessarily the same role a
No,
couple
I'll
of
give you
times.
an example of someone who's been with us for a long time, has
Yeah,
contributed a lot.
Rodney Binder did the same role in Annie the first time they did it, and then this last summer.
And they were both sold out shows, or
Yes,
runs,
yeah.
I should say, right?
Which-
It sounded very popular.
Oh, it was.
What do you remember from Annie? You were the director of Annie.
I know, Annette was the director and I was the producer.
Producer.
And she put me through my paces, I'll tell you. Her mind never stops creating. She'd call me, no, what do you think? I think we should do this. Let's try that. Okay, and as producer, that was my job. And, find somebody to build me a laundry car. So I would have to build a laundry car and find somebody to build a laundry car. but I did that. We're getting a signal.
And she had to also, I'm sure, was instrumental in managing the dogs backstage.
Oh my
The
God.
kids.
She
She's
got a
protecting the
tape.
kids.
My battery's gonna die.
Oh. So real quick, could we have time maybe for everybody to, what do you got there? You've got a picture? Did you show
Oh,
it yet?
this was just, she said, bring props, you remember, working is a blessing was one of the lines in the show, Working. Which to me, that show is like a peak experience, and it was in 1984, the spring of 84. And it was like a peak experience of my life, because it was the first total musical I directed. But Judy Bell stitched this, Judy Bell Hine it is now, so it was my gift from the cast. But that was a line that the teacher character did it. They did the show again later, but yeah, so that was just a line from that.
Quick final words, maybe while we got the batteries?
Go ahead.
1 minute, she said.
Community theater is family, and it
Mhm.
stays with you, and as your family goes through it, your kids remember it when they were on stage or being put to bed in an aisle while you rehearse.
I
But
like-
anybody,
Really is.
please come down and join us. There's wonderful,
Yes.
creative
Right.
people, and you will be guaranteed to have fun and make
Yes.
many precious memories for yourself. I think this is one of the biggest opportunities to
Oh.
really be creative and contribute to the community.
Lifelong friends.
Right, I met some of my best friends with community theater over the years.
And this theater has regenerated, if that's possible, our spirit. So we're stronger than ever, right?
Yeah.
One-
It sort of fits in with what everyone has said, and that is, one of the cool things about this art form is that it's collaborative. You're not sitting alone creating art, you are creating your form of art, somebody else brings in theirs, and as I said, it's a collaboration and you're creating something that never existed before and never will again.
Yeah.
Maybe it's on there. Diane Lutz, Pat Lutz, Barb Bachroth, Ronnie Harper, Tina Swain, Annette Camps. I'm Craig Warble. That's the 1980s at the Beaver Dam Area Community Theater.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thanks for
That's
the sign.
that's the longest one we've done.